session in the mediation legislation symposium. The work that you have done in Lithuania is excellent and I think needs to go out to the world for sure. So thank you for that. But I'm not going to let you come in, Agnė. I'm going to put up what we are doing here. So this is what we're doing. Mediation in government disputes. We're hoping that Palak will come in. And before she comes in, Agnė, I'm going to put you on the spot. I put everyone on the spot. Please tell us about the conference topic, and you can come later. The conference has to come first. So, Agnė, what do you want to tell us about the conference?
Yeah, so actually that's very, very nice initiative, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. So thank you for joining all mediators all over the world for discussing very relevant problems, and like to always finding inspiration for some new activities, networking, and so on. So that's a really great initiative. And today I was just huge and impressive. I was thinking what topic to choose, and actually few months ago we had very interesting discussions in Lithuania in regard of application of mediation in administrative disputes when public officials are in conflict with citizens, and how it is important to find that settlement, because of course building back trust, building relationship between two people is very important, but I think that it's the same importance when we are building trust between the state and their citizen. Yes. So that's something different, of course, and something more complicated, just because there is a lot of restrictions for public officials to negotiate, to participate actively, open-hearted in mediation. There is public law, there is a lot of regulations. And this topic was really interesting for us to discuss here in Lithuania. And we saw the same paradox, that everybody knows that mediation is very good tool for bringing people together, finding settlements. But when we look at numbers, when we look in reality, we notice that there is a lot of obstacles for application of that mediation, especially in that administrative law. So today I just wanted to start the discussion in that wider context. And when I saw the proposed title of the session, disputes like governmental disputes and mediation in government disputes, I thought that it might be in line with other panelists, and just to bring attention that even those small issues, when you do some construction, or when you are planning your territory, or when you are just in a need to get some official letter from some institution, and as a citizen will often appear in situations that we have some kind of expectations, but officials do not focus on that, and they're saying that it is impossible, they deny for us. And also we're feeling anger, we're feeling a lot of other emotions, which drives us to write claims, to appeal, and even to start litigation. So that's
but I was waiting throughout the thing. I was waiting, when does Agnė give a pause so I can come in and tell her, Agnė, please talk about the topic, about the conference. But she was of course talking about the topic, but we'll come to the topic we have to discuss. Why I was asking you to tell me about the conference is because I want to hear from people, what do they think about it, and of course how to further improve the event, because definitely this is going to be an annual thing. Why I need to put this out there also is because just the fact that it started on 18th May, goes up till 30th June, and which is obviously coming up now, and that it starts on 18th May because it's Ken Cloke's birthday, and I celebrate that as World Mediators Day, which I've started saying now is we celebrate it as that because all of us are celebrating it. And the World Mediation Circle, definitely work has to happen everywhere. Lithuania also, we have to make these mediation circles. So that is why I was trying to come in. And of course, you must meet Michael. Agnė, have you met Michael?
Not yet in person.
Okay. Michael is our reflective practice expert in the world, and we'll be creating some reflective practice groups And we'll have people from, of course, Lithuania and everywhere. So come in and just interact with each other, with Michael, with his vast experience. All that is going to happen.
And if I may say, Agnė, two things. One, I'm going to stay at least for 15 or 20 minutes, and then I have another meeting, and I will watch the rest. But perhaps equally as important or more, I too am Lithuanian. My grandfather emigrated from Lithuania in 1907 and came to the United States. He lived in a little village called Kvarsk.
Oh, that's so interesting to hear. And what a small world, actually. I'm always thinking that Lithuania is a tiny, small country in Northern Europe. And I'm happy to meet a person with Lithuanian origin.
But what you have to do, Agnė, is that Michael has been on my show, Evolution of a Mediator. He has spoken about his, of course, his life, but also his grandfather, father coming in, all that, everything that happened with them. He's spoken about that, about how he went to the village and all those things. I mean, whether he did, Michael went, he put a picture on that series also of the wall there. So you must watch that. Evolution of a Mediator with Michael Lang. If you search on YouTube, just put Mediator Vikram somewhere, you'll find it. You must watch that. And of course, there's a playlist. And of course, we have Palak here connecting to audio. It seems maybe let's get her in if she's connecting to audio, and then we can start.
Thank you, Agnė. I'm gonna be silent now and just observe. And
no, Michael, you can come in with your experience and all, which it's always nice.
No, I'll be here for 15 or 20 minutes, but then I'll have to leave.
Look,
and we'll look forward to another opportunity.
I have less pressure on the last session. This is my advantage of the last session. I don't have to worry about time after this. So I'm okay with that. Of course, Agnė has to worry about how Palak is finally here. Palak, yes, please. We're waiting for you.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much.
Agnė, I was thinking that Palak is coming in later.
I am so sorry. Just.
Okay. So before I get you in, Palak, let me tell people.
I had joined before, but I thought a session is running, so I left thinking that probably the session will end and I'll join.
No, you were supposed to. You come. Everyone becomes part of
I got that
session.
now. I was actually seeing the session on YouTube live.
I sent you messages on LinkedIn also. But before you introduce yourself, let me tell you how important it is to pronounce someone's name properly. If you pronounce a name as Palak, it's eyelash. If you say Palak, it means spinach. So that's the difference between pronunciation. So it's very important to get the pronunciation right. It's important, Palak, we have to put it out there.
Yes, absolutely.
So what we were doing is we did a little introduction of what the topic was has been put there. And I was saying that Palak had obviously wanted to talk about government as a model litigator, but I cut that litigator part of it. We are not going to have the government litigating at all. That should be our approach. So there. So, but Palak, you want to just quickly introduce yourself and then we go.
Thank you so much. First of all, thanks a lot, Vikramji, for considering me in this fine list of panelists. I think I have not done enough justice to the work to be able to sit with the dignitaries that are there in this panel. But I just feel grateful for this opportunity, and I'll try my best to share my experiences and insights that I have received so far while working with the government, and also seeing the possibility of mediation in government disputes. There's just a huge opportunity that I see in terms of using mediation as a tool for dispute resolution in government disputes. And that's what made me join this session, not just to communicate what I have seen, but also to learn from the other panelists across the world as to what interesting practices are being currently employed in terms of tackling this issue, or whether this issue is actually relevant in other parts of the country like it is in India. It's a very, very big issue here. The way the government is litigating, it's one of the most critical litigants in the system. It comprises of around 50% of the litigation that we currently see in our courts, from trial courts to the apex court, if you see the numbers, it's just 50%. So, that's there.
But
What the work that I do?
Always, whenever you say that, don't say 50%. In India, always give numbers. Let's shock people. 50%. What is 50%? The number is huge.
Yes, indeed. I mean, easily, whenever we talk about India, the numbers cannot be anything less than shocking. It's absolutely
let's shock them. Let's shock Agnė. Okay, let's shock Agnė. Agnė, pending disputes in India. Just a guess.
If the pending,
Agnė is going to tell us. Agnė is making a guess. How many pending disputes in India in the courts? One figure, just whatever figure comes to your mind.
I don't know. 5 millions.
50 million. 50
million.
million.
I almost.
And if government is 50%, can you imagine what is happening there?
And that's not even counting the tribunals and the other adjudicatory forums that we have. It's just sheer courts, the judicial court system that is clogged with this number. And we have so many other tribunals that are catering to adjudication process. And we are not even counting that in this number. So,
Palak, before you go further, please meet Michael. Michael is, of course, a wonderful person.
Of course, I was just listening to him. In fact,
and of course, his life story you can see or hear on Evolution of a Mediator. Please search that, do that, and he is an expert on reflective practice. So, of course, he does that, and I'm working with him how to get a lot of people into it, get them to experience Michael. Forget reflective practice; they have to experience Michael. So all that is going to happen. So you wanted to say hi to Michael?
Truly an honor to just listen to you and now be a part of this panel. See, it's just amazing.
Thank you, Palak. And I explained earlier to Agnė and Vikram. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave shortly because of another meeting, but I'll watch this, having met you both, to watch this on YouTube. But thank you. So if I disappear, my apologies for not being able to stay longer.
So Palak, Agnė, let Palak start off because he had put out the topic. So yes, Palak, please, mediation and government disputes.
All right. So to start a bit on what I do, I'm Palak. By education, I'm a lawyer. I'm currently working with this organization called Piramal Foundation. And it's the legal vertical of it, where we are working with various government departments, understanding the litigation challenge that they have, creating roadmap strategies for them to address it in a way that benefits all the parties, all the stakeholders involved, government, the citizens, the other stakeholders that are relevant in the system, all of it. So currently, I am working with the school education department in one of the states of India, that's Madhya Pradesh. School education department in India, surprisingly, is very litigious, which would come as a shock to a lot of people, that what kind of litigation usually goes into school education department. But in a small state, I mean, not so small, but yeah, in one state of India, school education department caters to somewhere around 1 crore children who are studying in that system, and 10 lakh teachers who are in the system apart, and then there are headmasters and so on and so forth, and so they are all a part of this system.
We'll just put them into millions. We'll just put that into millions because they would understand. Okay. Crore is only what we use.
I am so sorry. Yeah,
basically 10 million. 10 million is a crore. So 10 million is what?
Yeah. So it's that 10 million of children, and then there are teachers and headmasters, around 1 million teachers, headmasters. That will come across around 2 million. And that is the level of population that this department, without an HR, without any policy, is dealing with. So a lot of service matter litigation is in place here.
But like always, I like to shock people. Let's ask Agnė another question. How many children are there in schools in India, Agnė? It's always nice, but people don't understand.
You can go bizarre.
Yeah, the people don't understand the scale of this country sometimes. Agnė, how many children in schools in India?
I don't know such a huge numbers, even just, when we have a population of 2 million, like 2.8 million at all in Lithuania. So for us, we are like a small city in India.
That's why I'm shocking you. That's why I'm doing that. But tell me, how many school children in India? Just a guess. Just a guess.
Michael, please help me.
Well,
Okay.
I'm going to guess somewhere in the vicinity of 300 million.
Yeah, it's about 250 million. Yep. So that's the scale, Agnė. That's the scale of the country.
Scale. And I'm just talking about one state here. I'm working with just one state, and that's the magnanimity of the problem in just one department of that one state. And of course, there are several other litigious departments like railways, and there is the tax department, and there are so many other departments that are dealing with citizens one-on-one directly, and also falling into this trap of litigation. Of course, also with time, the evolution in what state is, what government is, has also led to a lot of interaction with the private parties. Initially, that may not have been the case. There was a lot of monopoly of the state. But now, given the liberalization and everything, there is just so much of interaction between private parties and the states, which has again led to a lot of disputes, a lot of challenges as to how interpretation is done. At the same time, economy has to be taken care of, has to be supported. So all of these are issues that are in the backdrop while we are talking about government disputes. If it is okay, I will just put on a PPT if that's fine.
Please,
and
please.
just for the facilitation of the session, I'll just share my screen.
At any point of time, Agnė, you want to come in? Please come in.
Yes,
Agnė?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll be very quick in terms of my discussion.
Take your time. It's a very important topic. So no, take your time. It's okay. But before I forget, I might forget. There was a session with Gabriela and Jimena in the mediation legislation symposium. Ecuador, they're from Ecuador. Ecuador is doing amazing work in relation to disputes with the government. So have a look at that session, and then we can all connect together. We can talk about it separately. But this is
wonderful.
That's one country where work has happened at the government level. That's
just great. So I mean, mediation is something that, although it's a buzzword right now, in India especially, this whole force of arbitration came in and conciliation, but mediation is now the buzzword. It's the new in thing, to be honest. But if we see how our country has been, our civilization has been, before 200 years, I think the whole idea of settlement of disputes was very informal in nature. This whole judicial system came in. Of course, it was a product of colonization, and that's what we are with right now. But before that, there was just a lot of informal settlement of disputes, variety of it, that was deeply rooted in us. And conflict resolution, to be honest, is something that India has had in its spirit. It's not just a conflict among people, among societies, among communities. It's also the internal conflicts. And so peace has been something that has been considered the utmost happiness in this nation. And it's actually said that santosham paramam sukham. So that's like the utmost happiness is peace. That's our tradition. So I think mediation does not come out as a buzzword for us. And that's what I think this conference is also trying to portray, that although it's like the new buzzword, but it's something that is so essential for peaceful societies and for, conflict-ridden societies to go back to those practices where people used to, use different channels to deal with these disputes in a way that also ensured preservation of relationships, not just a win and loss kind of a situation. I mean, there can be situations where the victory can be unequal in measure, but both parties or more than two parties can win in a situation. Unlike in litigation, which it usually has this win and loss kind of a situation, mediation can be a beautiful solution where victory, even though in unequal measures, can be given to all the parties. So I think that's something that is pretty incredible about this dispute resolution mechanism. And especially when it comes to government disputes, why it is a topic to be discussed in itself is the sheer nature of the one of the parties being the government. I mean, of course, government disputes can take various forms. It can be government versus government. It can be government versus a private party or individual or a community or society. So it can take various forms, but ultimately government is a megalith. It has just lot of resources at its disposal. It has all the public money at its disposal to ensure that it litigates till the end. Unlike any individual that it litigates against, there is just a lot of power imbalance there. And therefore, something like mediation that can actually bring that level playing field is something that we really, really need to talk about and see. Of course, there may be certain challenges and we don't deny it, but the importance of it cannot also be denied, and we need to really look into. So I'll just so as has been at the outset, we have discussed the sheer magnanimity of this issue. The issue of government litigation in India is, quite frankly, it's just sometimes it's unreal also. But if we have to dig deep, then we'll realize the problems that are there. Government, of course, is the biggest litigant. It accounts for nearly 50% of the cases, as has been said. Currently, for instance, I'm working with the High Court of Madhya Pradesh. I'm working in the state of Madhya Pradesh, and every day the cause list comes, and at least 40% of the cases you will see one of the parties being the government. It may be the state, it may be one of the undertakings of the government, but the daily cost list will have minimum of 40% of the cases, and that's the trend we have been seeing every single day. So the sui generis nature of government litigation as compared to some other litigations may be possibly that it has some huge expense on the government exchequer. And this government exchequer obviously comes from the public taxpayers' money. So obviously, if two government departments are litigating in the court, it's the money that is being paid for this litigation, the costs that are being given for this litigation is coming from public money. If the government is litigating against a private party, so of course the private party has to pay money for its own expenses, but the government again is paying from the public money. So there is that conundrum is also there. The challenge is also there. Then again, government litigation is an encounter of unequals. As said, that government has every resource at its disposal. In fact, even laws sometimes are drafted in such a way that they do give advantage to governments. If we see the civil procedure code running in India, we will see that the suits, if whenever a suit has to be filed in India, an advance notice has to be given to the court, a 2-month notice. So automatically government is in an advantage. There is an inordinate delay in dealing with such cases. Then of course there is lack of independent study due to unavailability and inaccess of data. There is no comprehensive data that we have today. Even this 50% figure that we are quoting is something that is not backed with solid data, because the idea of government and the idea of undertakings and instrumentalities of state is expanding day by day. The departments and undertakings that previously, say 20 years back, were not considered government or were not considered state are today being considered as state. So this government litigation data also is not something that we can rely completely on, as the expansion of the state itself is now every day it's increasing.
Palak, I just want to come in. Have you changed the slide? Because we are just seeing your first slide, mediation government disputes. We have not seen.
Is it? Yes, I have changed it. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so in our case, we were only seeing that.
See it?
No, because maybe what you might have to do is, if you want to,
I'll stop the share.
Yeah,
if that's
stop
okay.
and stop and come back. Start it again. Maybe.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
So I'll not make it full screen, probably because of the full screen it's unable to.
Okay, yeah. So you made it full screen and here it stayed at the same.
Yeah,
slide.
Exactly. So yeah, I've just put it back. So now government litigation, again, now it affects the efficiency of departments. It clogs the judicial system. It cannot be overemphasized. And the problem has been plenty acknowledged by the governments. Also, there have been a slew of initiatives to reduce the government litigation burden. We have the National Litigation Policy of 2010 that came in. There are action plans, and especially in the last 6 to 7 years, there has been some really oral, verbal, written acknowledgement of this problem from the current ruling government. And there have been a lot of interventions in that sense also. So we have a new court case management system that is running for the central government departments and ministries, which handles all the court cases and monitors the entire situation, where the cases are running, what kind of cases, what type of cases. Don't know how it's going to end this problem, but yet it's important to at least understand that government is trying to figure out the issue, the root causes of the issue. What are the departments that are currently at the edge of breaking out in this litigious departments? I mean, there is railways and tax department. Historically, they have been very litigious in nature because they interact a lot with the state, with the people. But now there are other departments also that are coming out as litigious. So that can be really important to have that monitoring and evaluation in place. I'll just think. At present, there are a lot of amicable settlement processes, so to say, for the government. You can see the PMA, the permanent machinery of arbitration. There is the administrative mechanism for resolution of CPSE. CPSE, by CPSE, I mean central government undertakings. So specifically for central government undertakings, we have the permanent machinery of arbitration. Then we have the administrative mechanism for resolution of CPSE disputes. There is also an AMRD, which also talks about other than commercial disputes. So PMA and AMRCD were specifically for commercial disputes between different central government undertakings. But then came the AMRD that takes it forward, and any kind of dispute that is between ministries and governments and departments can be taken by AMRD. Again, the success of these settlement processes and arbitration processes are something that we don't have any clear idea about how successful they have been, because if we see the current government litigation happening in the courts, we can clearly see that the success is not so tangible in nature using these schemes in place. Probably there is something that is missing in these schemes. Probably it is like these are schemes where the administrative itself is sitting in the position of mediators and arbitrators and conciliators. So there is this biasedness that inherently comes into the process. When we talk about mediation, we talk about conciliation, we assume that that third party is neutral to the process, it's impartial, it's objective. But in these schemes, usually the departments are themselves, the senior officials from the department are sitting as sole arbitrators. So how biased or unbiased these processes are can be questioned. Also, in the contracts and agreements that are taken up by the government, if you see the model contract clauses, the dispute resolution clauses, very standard clauses are put in, very boilerplate in nature. Just that, amicable settlement should happen in 30 days, not stating out clear procedures as to how this amicable settlement has to be brought in place. So it's very boilerplate in nature. They don't really go into the depth of what do they actually mean by amicable settlement. And if not amicable settlement, then it automatically goes for arbitration or litigation. Of course, bringing in of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act is a huge game changer in India. And now the idea of bringing in mediation bill, but again, conciliation and mediation, if you see, conciliation somehow brings in that nature of mediation. The act is very, it's sufficient enough. Also, if you see,
yeah, I get you. I'll come in right now. It is mediation.
It is exactly.
Called, I'll tell you why. I'll give you the background, because we adopted the UNCITRAL conciliation rules 1980. We adopted them. UNCITRAL has clarified now in their model law now that they've taken out that we were using that word that time, Now we are using the word mediation. There is no difference between the two. There's no, it is just because that word has become more popular. So it is mediation. People are fooling people that now we have a mediation bill, and now something, they're totally fooling people, misleading people. I've spoken about it so much in that mediation legislation symposium, so much about it. So we won't go there. Don't get me started there.
Oh, but I honestly, I mean, I don't have that kind of experience, but just a simple, reading of the laws, and that can tell you that, conciliation can plenty. I mean, it's sufficient enough to.
It is mediation. Okay, but
it is mediation.
It is nothing beyond that. Not even. But what we have to do is let's give Agnė a chance to come in, because
absolutely.
Agnė, anything up till now? Anything that you want to come in on?
Just I see that the same problems, despite of the size of the country and despite of the shocking numbers. I'm reflecting that actually all over the world, I suppose that amicable settlement processes, when government bodies are like parties of it, it's quite complicated till today. Yes, and there is no good for all recipe how we can cope with all this litigation, with all that court workload. So mediation might be, even, in some countries in Europe, there is discussion about mandatory mediation in administrative disputes, actually. And in France, even, there is a certain pilot project on that, mandatoriness of mediation. But of course, it's quite difficult to say. And when we're discussing purely in legal circle of experts, they're saying, oh my God, no, it's impossible, public interest, a lot of disputes which can't be mediated at all, and there is no space for negotiations there, and so on. But still, there is certain need to cope with that workload of the courts. And of course, what is more important, just somehow guarantee that access to justice for all. And if we have those workloads and all issues which can easily be solved during the mediation, for example, process, so it might be really helpful. So still searching for a site, and maybe Palak, you will provide some nice insights.
But yeah, the only thing, well, let me just come in there. When you said access to justice, I wanted someone to take up the topic, is mediation access to justice? But Nazish was supposed to do it, but she didn't, she was not feeling too well. But that is, we have to discuss that, because a lot of times it is said that mediation is access to justice, and I of course don't agree with it. But I mean, I don't want to put out topics myself and discuss them myself, so I didn't discuss that. But we have to. But Agnė, the hope is that, look at the Ecuador example. They are working on it. They've done something there. How it works, because I don't know, Palak will obviously take us through it. But the thought is that, of course, there is corruption. Those are issues in every country. So for the government official to actually settle something, is it going to go against them? I have a thought on this. My thought is that we have all these retired judges, and what do after they retire? They do arbitrations. They become arbitrators. Yes. Instead of them, make a body of all these retired judges. Every government department, if they get into a certain settlement, that settlement agreement goes to that body. If in 60 days you don't hear from them, there is immunity to the people who have, the government officials who have signed it, so that nothing comes on them. There's one thought I have. You people will, of course, give me more thoughts on it. So that's, Palak, what I wanted to put across. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, wonderful suggestions. And, things like this, actually, I mean, lot of things are very trial and error in nature. And we are seeing, I mean, even if we see the arbitration legislation, so many amendments, and that whole drafting has been very, I mean, it has changed a lot in terms of the years. And again, because we want to make the country pro-arbitration, and we want the country to be pro-ADR in nature.
On this show, with my events, never even use the A word. I call it the A word. We don't use the A word. That's another word.
All right. I'll be carefully maneuvering against the A word.
It's just private litigation. What is arbitration? It's just private litigation. So it's the same concept. Nothing changes. But a lot of people, the arbitrators make money out of it. That's all that happens in the process.
But that's happening. I mean, I feel that even if we are talking about this institutional mediation and how it's now being converted into something similar to arbitration. If you see Commercial Courts Act and how they have brought in PIMS, the pre-institution mediation and settlement, it's pretty much what arbitration is. There is an award, and that award is final and binding, and a lot of things are very in the nature of arbitration, that what we think of arbitration and what we think mediation.
What the pre-institution law says, that settlement agreement is basically covered under the conciliation section. So it's a settlement agreement under that. So it is enforceable as a court decree because it is as good as a consent award. Right. So it just, basically we have a law. So they had to connect it to a law. So that law is the one that which is the mediation law. It exists. So they understood it exists. And at the same time, the same people say there is no law on mediation.
There's no law on mediation.
They just confuse each other, and they confuse the user.
So. Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. I mean, we already have a law and that can work pretty well for mediation, but I don't know why they have to go again the same route. So yeah, mediation is not just a buzzword. I mean, we have plenty highlighted it, and I mean, courts have said that mediation should be accepted. And I mean, in this case particularly, they said that Mediation Act, there is a dire need to enact Mediation Act. Again, something that we are now contesting, that there is no need. We already have laws that can well cater to this mediation process and settlement and everything. We don't need another act to confuse the already confused system, and we just need more clarity and simplicity in this, because I mean, even the same thing is happening in other mechanisms. There are just so many mechanisms that even the government gets confused as to what to opt first and what to exhaust first, what scheme to go to, because there is an AMRD, there is an AMRCD. What disputes should go to that kind of AMRCD, what disputes should go to AMRD. So that if you add just too many channels, ultimately the case inevitably then goes to the courts. So it's better to have more simplicity in the system and clarity in the system. That should be our focus.
But the problem is, Palak, you're picking up these issues where I have to come in. The point is that actually the judiciary is confused about a law. They don't even read the law. The law starts with this thing that we have adopted the UNCITRAL conciliation rules 1980. What is the UNCITRAL saying on that is never mentioned. Never mentioned. There's a whole judgment which everyone looks at from the mediation perspective. Nowhere is it mentioned that we've taken that thing. What is UNCITRAL said? What have they clarified? Doesn't even talk about it. So they themselves are confused. Not a nice thing to say, Agnė, but the judiciary also sometimes doesn't understand the law.
I mean, I think we don't have to shame ourselves for that. Yes, it is a fact that there are a lot of challenges when it comes to the judiciary in terms of interpreting the ADR resolutions that we have. In India, for instance, the types of mediation that we are seeing, both institutionalized and uninstitutionalized in nature, we are seeing the mandatory or the statutory mediation. I think one of the sessions that was there was about how whether mediation can actually be mandated or not. I think there was one session that talked about that as well. So yes, we do have mandated mediation that we were talking about, the Commercial Courts Act of 2015. It was amended in 2018, and this pre-institution mediation and settlement process was brought in, which talks about mandating mediation for cases where no urgent interim relief is sought for by the parties. So if they are not contemplating any urgent interim reliefs, then those parties are supposed to go for the process of mediation first. And for this mediation, the central government has authorized our district legal service authorities and state legal service authorities, their mediation centers and processes that the mediators, the panel that they have authorized them. There is a set structure on how these parties can go there and seek mediation before they go on for the litigation or adjudication.
We just put it out there. Basically, the process is very simple. It's actually an online process. You actually just have to send a notice to the other side saying that we are filing this thing and would you like to come for mediation, and the person can reject it, and that's the end of the process. So it's not anything beyond that, but like you said, urgent relief required. So every lawyer whom they go to says some urgent relief is required, and they go
some urgent relief in the prayer.
Yeah, Agnė wants to come in. Yes, Agnė.
Yeah, but I just wanted to double check, but it's in commercial court, so it's for civil cases. It's
Commercial.
not for government involved cases, for example, for administrative dispute. It might be when one party is a governmental institution and another is like business, for example, but it's not from those public administration disputes. Yes.
Yeah, this is a commercial court matters.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then the other type of mediation that we see is the court-referred mediation. We have section 89 under our civil procedure code that talks about parties that can take the route of mediation while they have, although they have filed a case in the courts can very well refer those that particular case for mediation under section 89. It can be in the form of arbitration, conciliation, mediation, lok adalat, judicial settlement. So particularly in what I see in my work every day is lot of cases in terms of service matters are now getting referred to the lok adalat. So lok adalat is it's again a dispute resolution mechanism that has been created under a statutory act, that is Legal Services Authorities Act, where cases that have some sort of element of settlement, they can just go there. There are members who are from judiciary and from some expert members who sit as a panel, and then they decide such cases, and then they they basically settle those cases with an award, and that award is binding, final, and it acts as a decree of a civil court. So that's how I am seeing that the service matters are being referred in the system from the department. A lot of these cases are going for mediation under section 89, and they are being settled under settled in the form in lok adalats and national lok adalats. Of course, in matrimonial disputes, it's something that is specifically mentioned that if it's a matrimonial dispute, court is supposed to refer them for mediation. So court does that as a as in a customary way. They try to route these cases that come for matrimonial disputes in mediation. Then there is private mediation, where there is a qualified personnel that is hired and as a mediator on a fixed premise, and all. Basically it's a more in a way that it's a very neutral kind of a way, where actually the parties are requiring a mediation to be the process that they want in the first instance. So mostly these are the cases, the high stake cases, where private mediation is being used. Also, if you see that where in government disputes specifically, what can be the possible areas of disputes where government can try for private mediation is low risk tax disputes and environmental disputes. These are cases where actually private mediation can be a good concept to be brought in. Something that has actually been, I believe it's being used in UK also under the Her Majesty's Revenue, and so they have used this private mediation concept in a way. Probably we can also use this for our low risk tax disputes. Although
you should say all of them. They should use it for all of them.
All of them.
They give work to mediators. All of them. Just go there.
Absolutely. I think that is because we have started with a lot of new initiatives, the faceless assessment initiative in tax disputes, and there are various other mechanisms we are trying to evolve just to bring in that element of settlement and not confrontational approach between the government and the taxpayer or the citizen. So private mediation can be a very, very critical piece in this area of disputes. Specifically,
we have one session on the last day, which is oxymorons, mediation oxymorons. And one of the oxymoron that we are going to talk about is mandatory mediation. How does that mandatory word fit in mediation?
How it fits in something that is inherently voluntary. So
but at every point of time, we have to ask Agnė if she wants to come. Agnė, please, anything with your experience with legislation, anything that you would want to?
That experience with mandatory mediation, just of course, I understand that it's like from the first sight, it's very difficult to imagine how can it work. But actually in Lithuania, we have mandatory mediation in family dispute, and it works. We have like huge changes in numbers And people are happy. Last summer, I was working on ex post evaluation, evaluating all legal regulation in regard of mandatory mediation in family cases. And results showed that people were satisfied and that people will recommend their relatives, their friends to use mediation again. So that's, you know, there is no right answer, I suppose, saying, is it okay or is it bad to use mediation in that mandatory mode? Because in some situations in countries where there is no traditions of applying mediation, it might be very helpful. So that's...
Yeah, that's a discussion, because obviously, I mean, it's a culture that you have to develop, and that culture, how it develops. But the one thing that, I mean, I wanted, okay, we'll take it up later, because in terms of the Commercial Courts Act, if you look at the statistics, you'll be really surprised at what's really happening there. Only about 1% of those matters go in for mediation.
Yes.
Everything else gets rejected at the first stage itself. So what is the reason for that? Palak is going to get into that. She's going to give us a nice presentation next time. What is the mindset there? All that. Because when I look at those figures, it's like amazing. I mean, you have a legislation in place and people don't want to use it. Have you gone and found out why they're not using it? So for me, the problem is that you've gone into the hands of a lawyer, because you're going to file something. And once a lawyer has come in, there's no way it's going to go forward. It is they're going to say urgent relief required. So when I'm saying 1%, it's 1% of the ones where the notice for mediation has been sent. Think of the ones that have not even mediation. Yeah, notice has not been sent because urgent relief was sent. So imagine that is where I think for me the challenge is, how do we get them out of the hands of the lawyers? That's the point. Yeah,
I think that's a very fair point, and also it's somehow rooted in the culture that we have, especially, I mean, when I see government disputes, I mean, of course, Commercial Courts Act is far wider in net. It incorporates a lot, but in general, the psychological barriers that we have in our culture, when we see something that, you know, we have to settle something. I mean, it's so for instance, even in our criminal laws, if we see, the plea bargaining was something that was initially considered very immoral, and it is something that cannot be a part of Indian tradition and, you know, Indian laws. So from that shift to actually bringing in plea bargaining into the criminal system, it was there was some sort of evolution that was required, and still today we don't actually use plea bargaining in India. It's hardly used. People don't use it. They believe in rather to engage in litigation. So that the idea that our country is anyway very litigious in nature, they actually probably they derive some benefit from the delays that are there sometimes. Or, you know, we have to understand all of those problems. And even for government disputes, I feel, why do they actually go for litigation? Sometimes it's to just stall. They don't want to give any decision. They don't want any decision with their name in their records, which may probably end up affecting their performance, annual performance report, confidential, a part that is called in India. So what they do is better to go for litigation. Let the courts handle it. Let the judiciary say what they want to say. Let us not be a part of something that may end up, scapegoating us. So that is the nature and culture that we see in government disputes. And that is going to require some serious systemic change.
Yeah, it's actually in terms of the sociological aspect of it, the mindset aspect, the colonization mindset, all that, there's lots happening there. But Agnė wanted to come out when they said lawyers, she wanted to come in. I'm a lawyer, Agnė, I'm a lawyer.
Me too. Me too. I have a degree in law as well. And it's like, it's very difficult to change the mindset, but it's so important that people should somehow meet mediator. So, and that should be like good hands of mediators, that mediator who sees the benefits of the process, who has success stories, has recommendations, and so on. So that might be helpful. But I hear what Palak is saying, and I share the same opinion. Actually, sometimes people are afraid to decide, just because it is responsibility. And it's easy to get a negative court decision and say, oh, bad court, maybe it was corrupted or something like it, because it wasn't my decision. So now I'm like thinking to follow it or not, to perform it or not, and so on. So that's that big responsibility. So it should be like big change in mentality and the mindset, and especially we like post-Soviet countries, we feel it very much, that it's the lack of responsibility of saying, I can decide, I can make a decision, we can settle. So that's also in the cultural roots.
Exactly. I think that culture has to change. And for me, like with this World Mediation Circle and all that I'm trying to put together, I'm saying in schools, when we create that mediation circle, it is the children identifying their mediator. It is them knowing who those people are, them using the process. So right at that stage, they have a process that they own. It's their own process. No one is coming in and saying this person has to be a mediator, this whole concept mandatory and everything that creates that issue. Nothing. These children do it, and you have to catch them young. I mean, I've said it earlier also. There was one show of mine where this person's son came in, and I asked the son, if there's an issue that your friends have, would you help them? And the son said no, because my teacher won't like it. So in that young age, 7, 8 years old, it's already ingrained in your head that there is an authority figure where you go for dispute resolution, which is what the colonizer's mindset or colonization mindset is, that you have to go to courts and you have to have lawyers as part of the process. So that shift has to happen at the grassroots level. And that's where all of you have to work with me on creating these circles. It can be small, but let's get that mindset going at the earliest. Yes, Palak.
Yeah, definitely. And that's very important for the children, just to give that idea that conflicts in general is nothing bad, because in my culture it's like saying, don't be angry, you should not go into the conflicts. Why you're like having conflicts, you're a bad person, and so on. So that's first of all like seeing conflict like an opportunity to discuss, to find those ways to somehow to find a balance between different interests. So I suppose we should start from that very beginning, that it's normal to feel strong emotions in certain situation, and that's nothing bad to be in conflict, as far as you are managing it in good manner. Absolutely. And you're not hurting other person, you're discussing, you're hearing, you're allowed to speak. So that's in my side, from my side, I think it's very important.
Exactly. I think that's the point, that how you approach it, how you approach the resolution process is where the important aspect is. Conflicts, there are a lot of conflicts that should not be resolved. I am very happy with these conflicts of value systems. I don't like to resolve them. I'm not going to accept someone, like I keep saying, you're a liar. And now I say, okay, you can lie on 3 days of the week and you don't have to lie on 4 days of the week. If that's the settlement we have, I don't want that settlement. So some conflicts, value system conflicts, don't have to be resolved, and should, maybe for me, do not get resolved on these.
But
matters.
you know, we always can agree to disagree. Yeah. And if, as far as we are like accepting it, that sometimes we're disagreeing, and that's okay, we can go further with our relationship.
Yeah, you'll hear a lot about this. A lot of people on my shows say, let's agree to disagree. Lots of times you will hear this. because my radical views sometimes end up with that being the easiest way to finish them off. Yes, Palak, what happened to your slides?
I thought that we are having such a fantastic discourse. I think I should just minimize it a bit and see your faces.
Oh, you've done all this. You've done a good work. Let's get that back. Let's get that back. You put in so much effort. So much effort you put in. We like that. You've taken it seriously.
I'll just share it again. Just take me a second. So I think I just love how Agnė has just pointed out such a beautiful thing, that, you know, conflicts are an opportunity, and we should just take it as that. And it just hit me that, you know, even so we have our epic. Can you see my presentation?
No,
it's on the screen.
No.
Oh, I'll just.
Yes, it's coming in.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, we are there.
So you know, this conversation just let me, I mean, you know, we have this epic, I don't know if Agnė knows about it, we have this epic Mahabharata, and then we have this Bhagavad Gita. I don't know how much she knows about it, but our Lord Krishna, he's one of the many gods. He's the incarnation of of Vishnu, Lord Vishnu. So he can actually be considered as one of the finest mediators in a lot of instances in that epic. And as a god, he could have easily taken side and said, this clan is right and this is wrong, and he could have just ended it in, there was no need to have that entire epic. But the beauty of a mediator to, identifying issues, letting the parties resolve it among themselves. So, what he actually did was that he asked the two parties of what they require from him.
But you have to give a brief. You have to give, now that you started it, you have to give her a brief on that. What is the Mahabharata? You have to tell her. Now, look, it's a very important thing. It's basically lessons of life. Lessons of life that are put across. Now, Palak has picked it up. Now you have to give her a brief. Please tell her what it's about.
To simplify it, just Mahabharata is an epic. People call it mythology. Some people call it mythology, but for India, it's a tradition. It's a culture. It's been a part. It's actually a historical part for them. It's a historical past for them. Can be contested, can be argued about, but that's what Indians feel about the epic, that it has happened and it's true. And the Gita is just a section of Mahabharata where Lord Krishna gives advice or some guiding principles to one protagonist that is named Arjuna. So there are two clans basically in the epic. One is Pandavas, that is 5 brothers, and then there are Kauravas and 100 brothers, and both are cousins, and they are fighting for a piece of kingdom, for a piece of land. And it's basically a lot of guiding principles on management, dharma, and everything, and how Krishna he does not become a part of the war, but he facilitates, guides both the parties on how to take it forward. So, when both the parties come to him and ask, Krishna asks them that, what do you require from me? What is it that you need from me? So one clan, that is the 5 brothers, which is called Pandavas, they ask for him as an advisor. But the other clan, that is the 100 brothers that are fighting against the Pandavas, they ask for the army of Krishna. So, Krishna never says that,
let me just put it out. This is Krishna. Okay, this one is Krishna.
Wonderful.
Okay, so this is the war happening. There's a lot of action happening.
There's a lot of action. I just cannot even simplify it. It's just so hard. But just so much of action. And the simple thing being, he's just identifying the issues. He's being asked what is required, and he gives them. The one party asks him as an advisor, he gives it to them, that I will be your advisor. The other party asks for an entire army, he gives it to them. Okay, you get my entire army. He doesn't say which party is right or wrong. He only guides them, let them take their own decisions. And, ultimately what culminates is what is, the true essence of what we are talking about, being an impartial, objective person throughout, a dispute. So it was again a dispute of a land. In simple terms, it was just a kingdom and 2 parties fighting for that land, piece of land. It was a simple conflict. And
one important thing that comes out of it is that in our culture, you can say, everyone talks about peace and everything, but Krishna says you have to fight for what you think is right. Even if you have to kill your own, you have to fight for what is right. So this part, maybe a lot of places you might think, no, everything is peace, peace, peace. But if peace comes from this way, may it be.
So yeah, anyway, coming back to the
it's a whole lifetime to go through, Agnė. We can't take you through in 10 minutes.
So it's too big, just too many things that you can take. Every time you read it, you will come up with something very interesting. I'll just share my screen again. Hope it is being
lessons of life, Agnė. That's what you get from.
Is it visible now?
Good, you're showing us my message to you.
I'm so sorry.
That's what I can see. Hi, Palak, why
did you just finding there is Zoom link. So yeah, the idea that government disputes, how we see mediation as an effective method to what is the traditional methods of confrontation, like litigation. is the fact that they are very, it's the inherent nature of voluntariness and collaboration that it entails, mediation entails. Sometimes when the power imbalance is so huge, when we are talking about government disputes, it's important for that level playing field to happen. And probably mediation can be something that actually gives them that level playing field, that sitting together on one platform and discussing issues that probably no citizen will ever get. Citizens usually, they just keep on sending applications and sending grievances, and there is a very impersonal bureaucracy that we see. We don't really know who are the people who are dealing with our issues, who are the people who are dealing with our grievances. And just making it more real can something that mediation do, making the whole process more personal, more real for at least for the other party, even if not for the government, at least for the other party. That's very, very important when the power imbalance is so, I mean, there's just so asymmetry. Again, but also it comes with a challenge because of the whole power imbalance. Bringing such parties together on a table sometimes can also be counterproductive, in the sense that one party can actually settle issues in a not so right or adequate way. It can actually pressurize the other party in a way that, because of the sheer power that that party holds, or that other party holds, which is very real in government disputes. We have seen certain cases in other jurisdictions as well. If not government disputes, some disputes where the mediation has actually seen a little bit of settling element that was there, but with extraneous considerations or some wrong motives that crept into the process. So that needs to be taken, that needs to be really taken care of, because the party is very fragile, in the sense that in front of the government, they are just not that capable.
What you're pointing, yeah. No, I think what you're pointing out is actually why it's important, is because people talk about the neutrality of a mediator.
Yeah.
And in this case, actually, there is a book that Bernie Mayer has written, and he's discussed it on my show also. It's called Neutrality Trap. And he's actually spoken about this aspect, because if there are power imbalances, there is social change, and all those situations, should the mediator be neutral? So I actually had a symposium on neutrality and mediation, only to talk about this aspect. So the theme came from, there was a Desmond Tutu quote, which was what I had taken as the theme of that. I don't know whether you people have heard it, so I have to read it out to you. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. So this part is important. It's the role of the mediator. That's why it becomes important in this kind of situation that you're saying. So when Agnė wants to come in.
Yes, I would like to jump in just for short for short statement. Just of course, that balance in mediation matters, and especially it matters in like public disputes. Yes, when one of the parties is citizen, another party is official, public official. But also from other side, when they're meeting during mediation, what I'm observing, there is a huge potential and really big opportunity for them to correct their interaction. What does it mean? Like normally, most of the disputes are happening because of lack of information. And we as a citizen, we do not know all aspects of legal regulation, how to fill those requests, what to do, and so on. And it was like very, very good example, which one of my trainees shared with me. In his public institution, there was a huge number of appealed decisions. And they were like brainstorming what to do, why people are appealing almost every decision. And the new manager, the new director who came, decided to change the process in such a manner that the official, that person who passes certain decision, was obliged before passing it to invite that person to whom it concerns and explain everything in oral form just during conversation. And what happened? 80% less disputes in 1 year. So like it's proof that it's about communication. It's about how you present that idea. Also, it's about opportunity to get broader picture, think out of the box. And if you're, as a citizen, you're telling for the mediator and your opponent in that mediation, other party, that you have a certain goal, certain needs, for example, or interest, that official is mostly that person who can advise you. Because he knows very well all the situation, but he will never do it while he's on his duty in some room, not in the mediation, like not near the mediation table. So that's also, you know, getting that information is very valuable. And we have like a lot of stories of success when, like, with the help of that second party, public authority, person is getting the same what he was willing to get, actually, but it was done in different way with assistance of that official, just providing some advices, like somehow showing the other way, and it was also legitimate and everybody was happy, like win-win situations. So that's also like that function of sharing information during mediation. It matters a lot as well, especially when we talk about these administrative disputes.
I think the point is that the way the structure has been created, I'm saying it still comes from the colonized mindset that it is someone else's government. It's not my government. So we are interacting in a way that you and us are different. Not that we are all together. This is my government. I think that feeling, I mean, I will say it in Hindi, we use a word called sarkar, and that's always sarkar when you say it's the British government, and that whole attitude has just creeped in still in the bureaucracy, because the bureaucracy has been what we've given it, what we've got is what the colonizer gave us, and that bureaucracy by itself became the elite of the country, and that attitude stayed. And of course, if this large population, that difference between the two came in, and then that communication obviously creates the gap, then you had people in between to facilitate the conversation for some certain value. So all that structure has been created. I think you have to hit a lot of spaces. It's not as simple as it is. It's a structure that's been there for years, hundreds of years. You've created something, and Palak is working on it. She's going to find it, she's going to crack it. But what you said is really important, and how to create that culture, I think. But I still feel that I think in our case things are changing in terms of the government. I think the interaction today might be different, but Palak works with it, so she'll tell us better. But I think that things are changing. I don't know, Palak, what is your view?
No, absolutely. Things are changing, and you can feel it in the sense that obviously there are pockets, and there is a gap between the governed and the people who are governing, and it's not that easy to just fill it. It's going to take a lot of work and lot of time in terms of bringing the two together. I think one of the bigger issues that I see is the complexity of how they are being governed. The delegated legislation, for that matter, it's just too much for a general public to understand and to find their way in the labyrinth that is the bureaucracy and get there right. And I think that Agnes rightly pointed out is that lack of information. And because why is there a lack of information is the fact that a lot of work now is being done at the government level. It's not just a law has been made and the rights are being given. A law is made, then there are rules, then there are ordinances, then there are office orders, circulars, memos, just a lot of delegated legislation that people have no idea about. So as simple as a service matter, getting an increment in the education department becomes difficult, something that everyone knows that is going to happen. I mean, in states and in government departments, nothing is on merit, to be honest. It's more about how much time you've spent in the system. If you have spent 4 years, you will get an increment. If you have spent 7 years, you'll get an increment. Something as simple as that is going to be litigated as a matter of course, because people don't have access to what the service rules they are being governed by, what are the regulations that are being governed by. So that is a very big problem. How will you bridge the governed and the one who is governed?
But that's
It's very hard.
it's an opportunity. There is one person who's worked on this in terms of government schemes.
Yeah.
So the central government itself has some 740 schemes. Now, for a person sitting in a village to even know them is, I mean, far away, but to understand them is another situation.
Yeah.
So this person has created this whole team of people, large team of people. They go out into villages and they take their basic data. So basic data, what age you are, whatever, and they fit it against the government schemes and
What
tell them
schemes are applicable.
you're eligible for so and so schemes.
Yeah.
So as simple as that. I mean, a third person did not have to come and do it, but
Exactly.
it's an opportunity today. If that's an opportunity, let that be an opportunity. But of course, we have to make sure that things get simplified first time. But let me point out in terms of the mediation bill that you were talking about, we have a simple legislation on mediation, which is the conciliation.
Right.
The bill, complex kind of a legislation that you need to go to a lawyer to even understand a legislation. So
and that's what is happening. I mean, then you are making this whole mediator qualification very lawyer centric in terms that I think whatever I am seeing in terms of qualification for mediators, at least institutional, private, it can, you know, obviously parties are free to choose whosoever they want, but again, they it's instinctively they go for a lawyer somehow for a mediation. And even your institutional mediation, the qualifications are something that obviously lawyers will definitely be predominating that whole mediation as well. So, I mean, are these lawyers actually, I mean, do they identify what's actually the difference between mediation? Just because they're practicing in courts, they are being eligible for mediating.
I've alienated lawyers for sure. I keep saying that people don't understand the process. If they say a lawyer has to be, first of all, a mediator. The second is the lawyer being present in the mediation. I even, of course, criticize that because you haven't understood the process. Then if you say that, first of all, the process is about domain knowledge, then I think you've got the concept wrong. And if it is about you fighting for your rights and you want the lawyer to be sitting to do it, then you've not understood the process. You've gone into it with the wrong intention, it seems, or you haven't understood it.
You want the advantages of the litigation processes in a shorter time, in a informal setting, and is then, what you are trying to
and then what has happened is that, like in the US, lawyers control the process. Because it becomes settlement conferences. They call it mediation. I keep saying that mediation is like the elephant in the blind man situation. You might call it mediation, but for me, it might not be mediation. So that is not mediation for me. When lawyers sit together and fight about what their rights are, and then some settlement comes out of it. So lots of issues on that end. But in terms of complicated legislation, the mediation bill, it's either you say delegated legislation, that within that regulations were going to be made where even online mediation, there will be a legislation on, or a rules, regulation. Regulation is going to come out. How much are you going to complicate these things? To what end are you going to? So lots to be questioned there. Agnė, I hope you're listening to all this. Don't let that happen in Lithuania. Don't let it get complicated.
Things that stay clear from it. So, I mean, yes, absolutely. And I mean, although I mean, I want that mediation should reduce reliance on law and lawyers, and but somehow the process that we are following, ultimately it's just shifting from one place to another, just calling the lawyers as mediators, but not really getting the spirit of the process, and that's what we should aim for. That, you know, government disputes, even if they are, I mean, I have less expectations from the government because government always chooses the easy path. They don't really fight for understanding the concept. They are like, okay, fine, what kind of mediators should we bring in? Okay, it's a dispute, call the lawyers. So it's even difficult for the government to bring such things. Private mediation is still better, but having something institutionalized, I think lawyers and law will be dominating the mediation. That's how it's going to be. So bringing that awareness.
At all points of time, we have to get Agnė in because she has, of course, she has other commitments she might have to leave for, and we don't want to leave out any of her thoughts from that. So Agnė, please come in whenever you have to. And if there's anything that, because she wanted to have a discussion on related, but a separate aspect of it.
So I think we should hear Agnė, and I mean, because I have completed most of my points, and I would love to hear.
Both your points are important. Both of them are important. We have to take all of them into account.
I mean, I've got a lot of time, and thank you, Agnė, for the patience that you have shown. It's truly, thank you so much. And now I think it's better that we hear Agnė and her insights into the issue. I think I've substantially covered.
We are going to take you through all your slides, but yes, let's get Agnė in because she had a certain aspect that she wanted to discuss. So let's get her in and we'll complete all your slides, Palak. Last session, that's the advantage.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
You want to do that first? You want to do that first? What? You want to? What do you say, Agnė?
So you know, everything what I heard, it's really related with what I was planning to tell you, and what I was planning to suggest for our discussion. So like it's obvious that actually in my country, in Lithuania, before, I don't know, a decade, even scholars who normally are brave, yes, enough to raise innovations, they were not so brave to proclaim that mediation might be applied at all in public law. So it's quite a novelty in my country. And of course, like, first of all, disputants are see courts like litigation as the only opportunity. And only during this decade, we started some changes, and it was very surprising that those changes came from the practice. It's not that legislature or some scholars like started to promote the idea of settlement in general, settlement in the administrative procedure. It was from the practice when litigators, like parties to litigation, were asking judges finally to confirm their settlement. And it was very like interesting situation because there was no such an institute of settlement at all in Lithuania in administrative procedure. In civil law, yes, of course, you can end your litigation with settlement, but in administrative procedure, there was no such a possibility. So actually, that possibility appeared only in 2013. And as I mentioned, it was dictated by the practitioners, by the lawyers, by the litigants who were asking judges to confirm. And it was a good intentions from that practitioners to go for the legislature, and finally we got that institute of settlement with some small exceptions, but in administrative cases now from 2013 we can settle. And it was like some kind of precondition for the mediation, actually, because mediation will always remain just a method facilitating communication if its result will never have any legal consequences. It's very important to have a tool how to formalize all the results of the mediation procedure and make those results, those settlement agreements enforceable. So that's was a big intention for mediation to appear in administrative procedure even. And we have court referred or judicial court connected mediation in administrative dispute from 2019. And in every administrative cases, it is allowed to apply for mediation. And this procedure, of course, is purely voluntary. And of course, it is confidential, mediator should be neutral, and mostly judges mediators, like trained judges mediators, are mediating those cases. But however, statistics shows that very few of administrative cases were settled in recent years, and no significant numbers are reached. Like in European Union, we have some such kind of concept that if at least 1% of certain category of dispute is mediated and settlements are achieved, it means that mediation works and it is implemented right. It gains certain effect on judicial system. So we still do not reach that 1%. So of course we should dream about 10% at least to have significant impact on judicial system or workload of the courts. But everything, I hope that everything is in future. And I noticed an interesting paradox. I started in very beginning to talk about it when we discuss with judges of administrative courts the issue of settlement. They almost always declare very positive view. They see a lot of cases suitable for settlements, but when we analyze statistical data, situation is different. So that apparently developers of mediation are still looking for ways to encourage both parties to take those steps to go into mediation. And from practice, I can say that mostly public officials are saying no to mediation. And Vikram, you already mentioned one of the reasons, like they're afraid to be treated as corrupted, for example, if they settle, because a lot of questions may arise, why they settled and so on. So we're like scholars who are working in the field of mediation, we're trying to change that mindset as well. But unfortunately, certain public institutions, important institutions, for example, some ministries are saying that for all the institutions which they are managing are saying, please do not settle. It's better to get a court decision. You never know, there is a lot of risk to settle. It's better to get a court decision. So if we have such attitude, of course, it's like, it's difficult to cope with that. But like in recent years, I still see some signs of changing of the situation, because like all public administration is changing. New people are coming, new generation of public officials, and they have different mindsets. So I hope that they will be brave and they will stand bravely and do not change that mindset to that, how to say, maybe easier one. Just go for the litigation, get the court decision, and just perform it because court said that it should be so. But there is 100 of cases where not necessarily court takes the best decision in that situation, and there is a lot of circumstances that sometimes both of the parties are not satisfied with those decisions. So also we have in Lithuania like non-judicial mediation in administrative disputes. So we have like a special pre-litigation body which deals with administrative disputes. It is like commission, pre-litigation commission, and they introduced mediation in their activities from 2021, January. The first, and it is possibility in earlier stage to mediate and to get those settlements. So we were like expecting a lot from that new litigation, and it's quite good. Actually, everything is quite detailed, but not too detailed, regulated, but still the situation is the same. A lot of public officials are saying no for mediation. And even there is some kind of statistics where certain public bodies are like agreeing to participate in mediation and they're reaching very nice results. And there is certain public institutions who from, for example, like 50 or 100 requests to mediate, they're always saying no. And it doesn't, in some cases, people are saying, oh, it depends on dispute. In some dispute, we see the possibility to settle. In some dispute, we do not see. But if you're always saying no, so it means that you do not see at all such kind of possibility. But that model which we have in Lithuania for those mediations out of court, it's quite attractive because it's free of charge for the people and for public officials. It is not so formal, and they're getting really good specialist mediators who have a background from administrative law, and they're able to help them to negotiate. Normally, it is organized in the premises of that commission, so even premises are granted. And now, after the pandemic, it's very popular to do those mediations even online. So, of course, it's another topic, I suppose, we need in that circle of mediators to discuss, because I am observing that a lot of mediators are still working online because it's cheaper, it's more comfortable, and so on. But of course, we all understand that there is like not always you can build a trust. Not always you can feel the parties while being only online. So there is pluses and there is minuses as well. But it's very, very attractive for the citizens when they do not need to go where to drive to some other cities and so on and so on. So who are mediating, there is like two options. First of all, mostly those commission members who are enrolled in the mediators list of Lithuania, they are allowed to mediate in those cases, and they need to have special training, but it's very short to compare with like a normal, how to say, practice of other countries, but still they're trained, and for this moment they're like mostly they are mediating those disputes. But also there is a possibility to get a mediator out of commission, just simply out of the system, like private one, and it can be done with assistance of state guaranteed legal aid service, which is administrating all state-funded mediation. So it's also possible to get a mediator, private mediator, who is in the contract with state-guaranteed legal aid service, and it works on the same basis as our scheme of mandatory mediation in family dispute works. But of course, these are mostly different mediators with background in administrative law. So it's like, you know, all backgrounds are here, everything is ready for a huge number of mediation, but still there is not a miracle is not happening yet, and those numbers are quite low. So what are the challenges? I suppose the biggest challenge is education. And, you know, when you're like trying to develop, trying to foster mediation, it's crucial. It's crucial to have some kind of funding, maybe some kind of other opportunities just to provide trainings for officials, for public officials, because normally they do not know what does it mean to mediate. And if person do not know something, in certain positions, it's not good for him to recognize that he's saying, no, it doesn't suit me. I know, but it's like, I'm not using this. It's not for me. I do not believe in it. And I have my personal experience with judges. In 2014, together with a team, we trained about 600 judges and assistant to judges in all Lithuania. And we made a survey before the trainings in the field of mediation and after it. And of course, results were like astonishing, they were amazing, because most judges were very skeptical. After the training, they changed attitude towards mediation. They tried it during the role plays, simulations, they discussed about it, they shared some kind of their experience with some cases and so on, and they were really encouraged to go and to start that mediating. And the results, even in numbers, were perfect, like from several, how to say, 20 or 30 mediations in the court. After a few years, it was 500 mediations or 400 mediations. So it's like a big difference. Actually, the training and education is very, very important thing. Another thing is like, I'm thinking about the need to develop certain methodology for determining the suitability of the dispute for mediation. Yes, I understand that all disputes can be mediated if parties are motivated to do it. But for public officials, as the same for the judges, we need some kind of guidelines, like simple tool, how to check what case has a bigger potential to be settled and what case has the less potential. So we're thinking in Lithuania to do something to provide with such kind of methodological help for our judges and our mediators and our attorneys at law, the same public officials, and it might be good. We even have some pilot things, pilot guidelines, and we're checking it during our trainings with public servants. And they're like, it's quite good for them to have such kind of tools on their like table, and it's possible to check, first of all, check themselves. Am I right saying that this case should be mediated, that I should do my best efforts to encourage people to mediate, because I see from all the criteria that it suits mediation well. What else? I'm also dreaming about applying mediation more for prevention, not for the intervention. and that public sector is like unique. That opportunity is very nice, like to prevent those conflicts to appear. So I'm talking about preventive mediation, for example, in some kind of environmental area or in some kind of territory planning or constructions, where there is possibility to communicate, to facilitate the communication and to find solutions before certain decisions are passed, to find solutions which suit both of the parties. So that's also a very nice thing. And we all know that mediation is really most effective in the early stages of the disputes. And for example, in Lithuania, we do not yet have the possibility to have that real out-of-court mediation when no legal procedures are started, but just dispute arise. So we do not have that classical non-judicial mediation, because today you need to file a claim or to go to the court, initiate the litigation in order to mediate. So that's also the areas where in Lithuania, I think that we should develop. But it's very inspiring to hear about good practices of other countries. And that's also very important to share those practices. And such events as our dear Vikram is organizing, of course, helps a lot, because like sharing those good practices, it's very inspiring. And those people who are close to the legislation, in some point, maybe not tomorrow, not next week, but maybe in a month or in a year, they will be able to raise certain ideas for discussions, and that might finally turn on in big changes. So thank you very much for that opportunity, and thank you for you doing that. Okay, so I think that that's it for my
but you
from
can't
my side.
but you can't say that I'm leaving now, because I have lots to say on what you were saying. But of course, on this aspect about getting
Here as
experiences,
well.
experiences from various parts of the world, I think that's been important. And that's why I'm telling you, both of you, to watch that session with Gabriela and Jimena from Ecuador, because work is happening. And the main thing that they said, which was really nice, was that people are experiencing mediation. You have to make them experience. All those nice things you might be saying about mediation have been said for years, but actually to experience it. And for me, of course, for me, it's that mediation circle. And when you said preventive, it's at the first stage itself. But of course, there's a lot of cultural change that has to happen, because when you said about the judges, that to explain to them, for them to understand that this process works. In our law, we have a Companies Act. In the Companies Act, since 2016, there's a provision for mediation and conciliation. They call it mediators and conciliators. Panel has been made. But the members of the tribunal where these matters go, what, this doesn't work? How will this work? They don't even send any matters for years. It's been there. They just don't send them for mediation. We have the, look, legislation is there. Panels have been made. Everything is there. But if that comes from the people who don't even understand the process, and they've only worked in that adversarial system, and they think they can only decide, that's cultural change has to happen from their end also. But from the government official perspective, I'm looking from the Indian perspective, that first thing that needs to be done is they have to come on the ground. Problem is that the way they are trained and they are made to work, a young person who gets recruited into the bureaucracy is treated like a king in the place where he is posted, because it still comes from the colonial mindset that this is, if you see the house that they have, the life that they live like a king in that area. And you can understand, we are say about 80% rural population. We have 1 billion people in villages in our country. They look up at this person like on a different level altogether. So to actually create that culture there, the mindset of the person official has to change totally. Now, where's that? Does that happen through training in the institutes that they go to before they come onto the ground? Maybe there, maybe it has to be a cultural change in the people itself to say this is someone who just facilitates things for us. It's not the person who's the government's official, that difference between us and them kind of thing. So I think a lot of activity on that end definitely has to happen. And of course, I'm sure Palak has her thoughts also. There are lots I have to say, but I won't go further because Agnė doesn't have too much time. That's the only issue.
Yes, I'm really sorry. I need to leave.
But one thing I want, let me point out one thing before Palak comes in, that the fact of mediation developing because the judiciary is inefficient, that's not the right way of mediation to develop. And today we are pushing mediation only because the backlog is so huge and the judiciary being the most inefficient institution, no one wants to question it because it's the colonizers' judiciary. No one talks about the judiciary, ill of the judiciary, because, oh, it's the judiciary. That has to change, definitely. Let them become efficient. If it makes the fact that mediation doesn't develop, not a problem. You give justice at the right time to the people. You are failing in your duty. Don't push it towards mediation now and make that the way of getting out of it. So make them efficient. Interesting thing that happened was in my first symposium, there was a person he's from Israel, but he's now working in Berlin. Agnė, at any point of time you have to leave, just say, okay, I have to leave now. But there he said that in Germany, the judicial system is efficient. So mediation is not developing there. Damn good. If Israel is not efficient, so it's developing. If the judiciary delivers, and like you said, people want a decision, give it to them. I don't want mediation to be developing, because the way it is developing is not the right aspect of mediation which is developing. Now there's a gun on your head. In the court system also, if you go through mandatory mediation, as the oxymoron is, you have a gun on your head created by the judiciary itself, that we are inefficient. It will take you 14 years. It'll take you so much. It costs you so much. So you go for mediation where you settle because the mediator tells you it will take 14 years and it'll cost you so much. It's just the wrong way that whole thing is structured. So we have to look at it from a perspective of growth of the concept of mediation, which is collaboration, amicable, of course, the resolution, the relationships, all that aspect. And that aspect of mediation should not get left out. And a new whole thing goes into people's mind that this is what mediation is. So that's what I have. So Palak has 30 seconds. Palak, you want to say something to Agnė, and then she has to leave. So
yes, I'll not. I'll just ask a couple of things that I need to know. That do you have in Lithuania? Do you have a system for collating data on mediation? I mean, you were just saying that 1% cases should be mediated, and hence it will be considered to be workable. So, is there any system in place for such kind of collation of data, or is it something just independently?
No, actually, it's a European Parliament. We're carrying on certain studies, and there were calculations about efficiency of mediation. So you can search for it, and it's really interesting studies because it's like grounded that. How many cases should we mediate in order to get that effect? Like workload, lower workload, other social inspirations, also like saving significant sum of money and so on. So that's very important. But here also, I would say it's like another area for development, because like there is a need to gather statistical data on mediation. A lot of countries do not have any statistical data. Just mediators are doing something somehow in some frequency, and that's it. And there is no registration, and it's impossible to count actually. And if we would able to count, we can see those effects. And if we're like having those statistics and try to work with it, we're finding out like very, very important results from both sides. For example, when we talk about saving of money, or maybe it's not the first thing, yes, but it's important. Money, it's important. Let's be really realistic. So, but we should count from both sides, from governmental side, from judiciary side, and also from the client, from disputant's side. So it's very difficult calculations to count from all those sides, but it's very important. And I think that in our future, for those who are trying to foster mediation, it's necessary to think of such kind of system. And I think that it can be quite unified, because we're talking about the same, like cost of judiciary and cost of mediation processes. So some calculations in EU are already made, and some recommendations are, so you can search for that data.
Because one point that comes out of that is because the judiciary is wanting to push it there. So this free aspect that has come into it, that it's going to be given for free, not understanding that free also has a cost, because ultimately the taxpayer is paying for that. So if the taxpayer is funding people's disputes, which is the saddest thing that should happen.
Yes.
It's the saddest thing that can
definitely.
happen.
If state is funding, if state is paying for the mediators, of course, we all are paying. So we should understand it, and we should, like community, like society, yes, also like those who are doing it should be responsible and should also count and explain why we are paying for that mediation and what kind of like savings it gets in a longer period. Absolutely. And it can be easily counted if we have statistical data.
Because so Palak is our research person, so she's going to work on everything that you said. But Agnė has to leave now. She has 2 minutes to join the next meeting. So, okay, Agnė, thank you very much.
So
and
much.
Palak and I will continue. We'll see all our slides. Not a problem. You can watch it later. So, see you. And last day, 30th, please. Last day, you have to come into the last session. Okay, Agnė, whatever time you come. See you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
See you, Agnė. Lovely. Just be.
She had to go. She had a meeting there. She told me she had a meeting. So
I'll just quickly
wrap now there's no issue. Now there's no issue. I never have a time issue. These discussions are really important. So please, you have to take us through it nice and slow.
So I'll just share the screen again. And although like substantially the points have been covered, just to give it a nice conclusion. We were talking about the aspects of mediation, and especially in terms of government disputes. As I said, I mean, reduced reliance on lawyers seems to be a really difficult proposition at present. But yes, if we truly understand what you have just mentioned, if we truly understand the concept of mediation, and we don't see it as like, okay, litigation is not working and things are problematic, so let's go to mediation. If we see it in that perspective, we will never be able to reduce it. But if we see it as a fresh, new, different concept, separate from what we have seen in this adversarial and confrontational kind of approach in terms of litigation, definitely this reliance on law and lawyers will reduce substantially, because the disputes that we see, which are very which can easily be settled, are hardly questions of law. Most of the times there is no question of law, it's mostly question of facts. Even in tax disputes, many a times it's just question of fact. It's just the citizen or the taxpayer doesn't understand certain issues in the assessment, and he just needs that clarification. It's not always some very new interpretation of law that is required or so. So I think that's where reduction on the reliance can be taken care of. Again, cost and time efficiency, it is something that we are seeing as a positive in terms of mediation, because litigation, when we talk about litigation, we hardly have any statistics that actually tell us what kind of costs are being involved and what kind of financial burden the country is suffering from just by. But there was in the 2017-18 economic survey, there was some talk about government litigation and tax disputes and what kind of infrastructure projects and what kind of financial burden that they can entail just because of the pendency of the issue. So there was just some touching those points there. In a very simple way, even when I am working with the department and I'm seeing the service matters and disputes, it's a very, very small fraction of what, economic survey and the entire thing is talking about. But even that becomes very significant when we actually see all that money is public taxpayers' money. And we need to understand even a penny that is going on it has to be, very carefully rationalized. So we were just preparing data sets, and we saw that around 4-5 lakh rupees is just being given as cost.
Tens or 100,000.
Cost of delaying compliance.
You have to talk in. You have to use, because US dollar everyone understand, but you have to use it because people otherwise don't understand lakhs. We know lakhs.
Right. So what will probably be? The conversion I'll have to check.
Look, if $10,000 is 5 lakhs, is 8 lakhs, is 9 lakhs. $10,000 is 9 lakhs.
We can consider, at the present conversion rate, around $10,000 is something that the government, only the education department paid, not even at the cost of lawyers, etc., just cost that was imposed for delay in reply or delay in compliance. The actual compliance, the lawyer's money, that is something that has not been even, right now we don't even have any data sets too. This is just the data set that we have about the costs. And that too only of 5-6 years back. That's it. And that too only for contempt cases, not even the writ petitions. I'm not even talking about that. So, I mean, it will just, if you just keep on zooming in, it just expands. And
so basically what you're saying is that somewhere with every matter, there should be a tagging of the cost to the ultimately, look, its cost is to the taxpayer.
Exactly.
So what is the cost to it in
what
terms
is the
of
cost?
the
What are
judge's
being lawyers
time,
being paid?
everyone, judge's time, the lawyers,
Lawyers.
whatever other infrastructure goes into it, resources
If that
go
is
into
possible, I think it's
it.
nothing better than that.
The time of the officials, that
Right.
they have to do other work also, because look at what the situation on the other side is. Anyone, even if you say 1 rupee on this end, on the other side, the poverty that we have in this country, to be funding someone's dispute is crazy. Look at the other side of it. So in terms of time also, these officials have so much more to do in this country. And what are you doing? Preparing for a matter, and every time the new date comes in, they're going to be doing it again and again, and they'll be wasting time in courts. So where is that time calculation happening? So that time calculation also has to go into the cost aspect of it. It is a cost.
Absolutely. I think we really need to see it from that perspective, and realize that, government litigation it comes at a very huge cost. And of course, that is not just the sole reason of why we have to choose mediation, but understanding that, litigation is not just, government and private party fighting. It's government fighting against the private party on the money of public. So that realization is, I think, somewhere missing with the government as well. And of course, public at large, they don't understand what's at stake.
Which I think the problem is taken for kind of granted that the government will in some way oppose you, some way or the other. It's somewhere it's just become culture. Oh no, this is your government. Why should there be such an adversarial concept at all? So that whole mindset is one thing. But what you said about the aspect about lawyers and not understanding the process, the problem is with mediation going through the court system, that connection even becomes stronger in people's mind, which we don't want that at all. At the earliest, we have to make sure that before this concept reaches them, we have to put the nice concept of mediation out there.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that's an important part we have to put across.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, even in the work that we are doing, we are trying to see how we can, I mean, the concept of mediation can be brought in to address these kind of disputes, not just because there is litigation, we want to take it out, but as a process of grievance redressal, that makes just everything more personal in nature. I mean, brings bureaucracy, brings the employer and employee together, because mostly we are dealing with service matters. And it's just an employer and employee. It's like, it's bizarre to even think that even for an increment or for some retirement benefit, someone has to go to court. And sometimes the costs imposed are higher than what actually was asked in the petition. The prayer, the suit value is far lesser than the costs imposed. And the money that has been spent on litigation from trial, from your high courts to Supreme Court. And sometimes it's really bizarre because there is no understanding of what is at stake. For petite amounts, I mean, for petty amounts, they are just continuous compulsively litigating because, I mean, they can, obviously.
No, and look, one thing that I said, of course, my World Mediation Circle, I talk about that humanistic approach. First of all, that humanistic approach has gone in terms of the system that way it's been created. So that person is not even considered a human and dealt with in a manner, like you said, an employee having to, for a basic aspect of it, having to go through what they have to go through. Okay, he's just a case number in some court somewhere, but he's a human being there who's gone through life in a certain manner, needs some money. So that part gets lost in this entire process. The other aspect is, of course, when are you going to stop the litigation? Because if you are going to say, no, we will not file an appeal, that goes against you. So it goes back to the same thing, that the bureaucrat or the official is not going to let that go against them. So that's another aspect, which is what I was saying, Palak, work on this kind of a body that can be created where you have these retired judges. Let's give them some work to do. Let them do that. And I feel that at least if the officials have immunity, a lot of these issues, I think, can go out. And again, let's use that part, what I was said, that, judiciary is, I mean, of course, if you look up to the judiciary, then in that case, this is a body of judges, you won't question them. So maybe that advantage we'll get there. So at least you will say, no, the government is corrupt, and everyone will say for a moment, maybe if that makes it easier, why not? So
makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I'll just is my screen visible?
Screen is visible now. It's moved. Yeah. Now you got the step.
So again, it's just emphasis on the same points that we have discussed in the entire discourse. Why mediation in government disputes? Of course, the issue of cost, the issue of sizable amount of revenues being just locked up in litigation for years and years, not getting any resolution. I mean, there's no urgent, the flawed process of mention in the courts right now, which is being questioned again and again today. How the mentioning is happening, what kind of disputes are being taken up for mention earlier or later. It's something that really needs to be looked into. And of course, there are organizations that are working towards it, seeing the mentioning process in the registry, how it is being taken up. But of course, it is something that is going to take some time, and but the economy will suffer every day for that. Adding another opportunity of conflict resolution, of course, curbing sustained fruitless litigation, overly adversarial attitude of department. Now, there's one thing that has come in the picture, that obviously we are saying that government is it's a compulsive litigator, which it looks like it's a compulsive litigator because it keeps on appealing and all of that. But in the first instance, most of the writ petitions that are being filed are against the government. So it's not the litigator that is going to the court for the first instance. It's usually a other party or the private party that is going in the first instance to these courts.
Palak, he's going to the court in writ petition only because of some administrative action, which is arbitrary sometimes, it's very arbitrary and a lot of things. So that's why it started from there only.
Yeah. So I mean, of course, the basic grievance that can be redressed timely through administrative processes, through proper grievance redressal channels, even through mediation, now that it has come as a very important aspect of it, is now, I mean, people have more faith in, taking it up through courts rather than actually going and filing a petition with with the concerned officer. They don't trust that letter that they will give or the application that they will give to that officer, but they prefer going to the courts. That's also the case, that trust deficit is so huge that, until and unless court will say something, officer will not do anything. That is the attitude and that is the thought process that the people have today. And it's scary because I mean, for simple things, if you believe that court or judiciary is the masiha for the problems and you can't just communicate and have that conversation with the bureaucracy. You will be able to go to regional benches. You are ready to go to New Delhi, but you're not ready to talk or ready to have that dialogue. I think it's very it says a lot about the process.
But what you have to do also at the same time, Palak, when you talk about this, wherever you put it up, also compare in terms of the fact that the judge's time is being used on something which might be really frivolous, which could have been a very basic thing, could have been handled. And what is happening on the other side? There are people in jails, under trials in jails. You are not being able to decide those, because sometimes people have spent more time in jail. If they had been convicted on day one, they would have spent less time.
Absolutely.
So all that has to be looked at when you look at the time being spent on these aspects of basic administrative things, which are arbitrary, which could have easily been sorted out at the first stage, which is very good. I mean, when you're pushing the aspect of mediation, this aspect has to come out. That what are we doing?
If you see there are 10,000 pending cases for school education department annually. Annually, there are 10,000 pending cases. And if you see, I'm not even, overstating, at least minimum 80% of these cases, the order that comes out is representation to be decided by the department. That is what they are saying. Ultimately, there is no order on who is right or who is wrong. The order is, please give representation to department.
Where it comes from? It comes from whichever child cries the most gets fed. So out of all these numbers, these are the ones who cried and went to court. So they should be heard, which is the most absurd thing. You should
Most
hear
absurd
everyone.
thing.
You hear everyone at the right time. No, this one cried and could cry a little louder, so he should be heard. But you say 10,000 in this department in the state, one department.
One department.
So, but in that state, there will be lots of these, or just 10,000? Nothing. This is, which department is this?
School education department.
So
I'm talking about
one part of that state. One part of that state. Or
no,
the
no,
whole, entire state.
Overall state, there are annual 10,000 writ petitions and around 1,000 contempt petitions.
Okay, okay. Well, the 10,000 doesn't sound enough. Too small for even there.
10,000, I mean, standing every year they are there. I mean, because obviously there is no case per se. So what happens is it gets disposed of. I mean, it comes in, court takes a year or so, and ultimately it says, you know, just go to the department and department just listen to what he's saying, decide.
Okay.
That's the ultimate line.
I should not say. For me, when we say 10,000 doesn't sound like much, where parts of the world where 10,000 will be like
but just one department, and that too school education department, which hardly comes across as a litigating department. I mean, I'm not even talking about railways or tax department, which is actually litigious departments. They are actually seen as litigious. School education department, who would believe that actually they have 10,000 pending cases of just service matters, 10,000 service matters.
That's what you have to specify down to those service matters of that particular.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, yes, of course, inordinate delays, adding more financial burden, and actual cases being filed by the government against private. That's what I've shared, that yes, the government going against private parties is lesser in first instance. It's the appellate format where the government keeps on going for appeals and further appeals rather than addressing the grievance. I mean, if the grievance has come, you have understood that there is a set grievance and it's in the court now. Why can't, you can just address it in a go? Why do you have to make it confrontational and go for appeals and further appeals rather than just seeing if there is any element of settlement, or if there is any element of having that out of court settlement? So
which we discussed now, that the fact is that you can't stop the appeal process because it will go against you.
It will go against you.
So that is the only problem that we are facing there. So how do we handle that? One, I told you this body, but you will also think of other ways to do it.
Exactly.
How do we do that? Yeah,
we've understood. So yes, I mean, it does come with challenges. If we see mediation in government disputes, there are couple of things that we have already talked about. One being that skepticism that officers have of settling certain things, because there can always be an allegation on them, because even in arbitration or I mean other things also, we see that that element of there is a chance that some extra motivation is added to them or some consideration is added to them, and they don't want to be a part of that, so they just avoid it altogether. Think that let it be, let the courts handle it, let me not be a part of anything that can be, I mean, come back and bite me. So that's one issue, that's a very big challenge when it comes to government disputes. Of course, there are then psychological barriers that come through a lot of things. I think it's too wide a thing to say. It can be culture, it can be our society, community, things that are there in the society, the nature of bureaucracy, lot of things that bring that psychological barrier on whether mediation is actually something that can be taken up, and why not litigation.
Yes, we have to
then there is
psychological barriers and sociological issues.
Issues.
We can write that.
Maybe. Enforceability, I think, of course, now that mediation, a lot of acts are saying that it will be seen as a final and binding, but the core idea of mediation was never bringing that binding or final element, but it was more about reaching towards a certain resolution of dispute, and obviously when the two parties reach, they think that it is final and it's binding.
You have to point out, what you have to do is you have to put it out there that we were so much ahead of our times when we got this legislation in 1996, where we understood that even enforceability can come up in question by people. So we've got a settlement agreement, which is as good as a court decree, and you can get it sitting in a village in India. You don't need any government intervention, judicial intervention, nothing, because today there is a discussion that, settlement agreement to be registered. We're not understanding that whole process. You're putting them into hands of someone who is going to in some way make money out of them. So luckily we don't have all that. And because of why? Because definitely enforceability should not even come into question. because you've settled the matter. So we've got a very good thing going, and you must put it out there, saying that enforceability also in our country is, you can't get better. You can't get better. How can it be better than an agreement which is just signed by the conciliator and now it's a court decree? Amazing what we have.
I think, yeah, I do second that, that what we have is pretty sufficient to cover this part of it. And although we say, I mean, people come out with this question, but it's pretty much settled that mediation can very well be enforced. It's something that can be very much be enforced as a decree.
I have to point out to you, because people might want to confuse you. Oh, conciliation is not mediation, because in the case of conciliation, in our law, it says that the conciliator may suggest.
May suggest.
Perfectly all right. It may. That is what we do. We do suggest, and but it's not binding on them that they have to accept the solution. And nowhere says, nowhere in the act it says that. But they try to confuse people in this way. People have to understand this is a general legislation where you have to take into account all kinds of processes happening. Some processes people do not suggest. That's the way they handle the mediation. But in with other people, they suggest, and the people in dispute want that suggestion also. So this law has to provide for everything. This is, I'm telling you, they try to confuse people by saying these kinds of things. Yes, suggestion should be and can be made, not a problem at all, and that is what the law provides. But it says may. And it's also for the people that may accept it. They don't have to accept anything that the conciliator says. So please, I'm just telling you why, because this is discussions that are here, and even sometimes in the judiciary, lawyers and sometimes even mediators have all gone out and said we don't have a law on mediation. So we need to put it out to them that maybe the only thing that you have to do, look at, Palak, is the UNCITRAL model law of 2018, because we took the 1981. Now we also have to understand in 1980, all this was put out there. And why was it put out there? Because people had to be explained the process. So actually it goes about what the conciliator should look at while going through the process. So it's actually a guide for people.
It's more like a guide. Absolutely.
And imagine for people who actually would not have any connection with the process, at least you're giving them a guide. And the best part is, I always keep saying, look at the Hindi translation of the law. Have you had a look at it?
No, I haven't.
What does it say? Conciliation is called what? It's called Sulh. The law is called Sulh, and people understand Sulh. The word connects with them. So it is much easier to explain to them that you have a law on Sulh. I mean, what better can you get?
Yeah, I knew about arbitration. I think it's Madhyasthita, but I didn't know about
the law itself calls it Sulh. So we don't have to use this mediation, conciliation argument. Forget it. Okay, we are only Hindi speaking. We only say Sulh. Now you understand? Is there any problem in understanding that?
Right. That's amazing. I mean, yeah, true. That's really, I feel, I mean, a lot of questions that I had in my mind are being answered. Something that now I can, with affirmation, I can tell people. Something that was, I was like, yeah, this is what I think. I don't know if it's the right interpretation or if it's the valid interpretation. So I should better be quiet. But I think that affirmation has been very helpful in the sense that now, if these questions come, they're put to me, I think that with confidence, I can tell them that, okay, this can be enforced, and how efficient the 1996 Act itself is in dealing with mediation. You don't need something else to bring it in. And
even if you need something else, we took the UNCITRAL conciliation rules 1980. We have the 2018 UNCITRAL mediation model law. It's available to you. Have a look at it. Where is the issue in that? I mean, why are you going into any other drafting when people from all over the world sat together and they came out with a draft looking at considerations? There are a lot of considerations that have to take place. When all that is done for you, and then you want to reinvent the wheel and make it square.
True. So yeah, I mean, so one thing addressed there. I think we'll have to move it out of the challenge. I'll just revisit this slide again now. So I think that another issue that specifically in government disputes that I feel, and I feel that it's personally, I feel that it's somewhere it's valid also, is that sometimes mediation as a process is very individualized and personalized. And when we talk about government and the disputes that they have, it requires a bit of equality in terms of how they're treating similarly situated people. So if I'm giving some kind of benefit to, say one person, let's assume a teacher, if I give it to him, probably the similarly situated teachers in the same place would want the same benefit, and probably it has come out of settlement, but it may not be something that I would like to apply in general to everyone. So I think that that's a little tricky part when it comes to government disputes, of how to maintain that balance of also being individualized in nature, being real to one party, personal to one party, but at the same time not affecting the principle of equality that has to be followed by the government, because they are driven by constitution, they are driven by those rules and policies. They have to follow that equality principle. So I think that is where a little bit of mediation as a process, sometimes not all disputes may probably be taken up by the government officers for mediation, because they would feel that if I settle this case, then 100 other people will come and say settle this case in a similar way, and I may not want that for them. So I think that needs to be
but this
that's
also
a
then
fine line.
but this also comes from the fact that what the mentality of the officials is, that finally the aspect is that if it is the just thing to do, it has to be done for everyone. That's the whole concept. But if you feel that you can get away with some arbitrary action against everyone, and only the one who cries the loudest, I will give them the toffee, I think that attitude has to in any way go. And the governments themselves, that reform within the government thought process by itself has to happen. That's it. I mean, that, and it'll flow into this. They'll flow into this, but that's a whole mindset that you have to change. And I feel that it's changing. I don't know. You are the one who dealing with the government, so you'll tell me better. But I have hope there. I have hope.
Absolutely, I do agree it's changing. It's just that yes, that's one thing that they always have in their minds, that I mean, if we are having this, we are taking this administrative action for one case, probably 100 other cases will come up in a similar way. So is that action something that can be applied to all? And because it involves a lot of financial implications sometimes, so they have to think it through, because it's not something always in one department's hand. So yeah, I mean, there is some fine balances that have to be taken care of, but once they are taken care of, I think it's safe to say that mediation can be used even in those cases, because there is always element of resolution of dispute is more important. Settling does not mean compromising on principles or rules or regulations or changing it for one person. That's never what we say when we talk about settlement of dispute. Of course, as government, they have to follow certain set of principles, irrespective of who is there in front of them. So the idea is just that that settlement is something that also enables equality, and they don't have to be arbitrary in any sense, because arbitrariness, if they show it even in mediation, is pretty much something that will be struck down by the courts in one way or the other.
Yeah,
so
I think how we should look at it is that this one particular matter is an opportunity for the government also to understand the other side. And then once they've understood it for one person, it means they've understood it for everyone in the similar situation. So in that sense, you have now been able to, of course, in your little notes that you have to make within the government, now you can say that, yes, this is one issue that we have understood we went wrong on. But Palak, the only problem is that with me, time is not a factor. But I'm sure at your house, this is a problem. And I'm sure people must have been telling you, what are you doing, Palak? Have dinner.
No. The great part about where I am is that I am quite free, in the sense that I'm in a very remote location, and that's never a problem. But yes, I think I've just completed. It's the last slide.
No, I'm not asking you to rush it. I'm saying from your end. You haven't seen me.
Not at all. I've committed to this session, in not just with the time, but also my attention and my commitment. So it's not just कि 1 घंटे के लिए मैंने commit करा था. I never asked you when the session will end ever in our entire conversation. It was something.
It's a very important thing. I mean, I see comments also, people putting nice session, extremely good session. It is a very important topic, and it can take care of things for so many people in the world. It's not just an Indian issue. If it's all these issues are all global issues. People might think in our country this happens, not in somewhere else. It happens everywhere. Arbitrariness is part of what the colonizer gave, and all these countries, almost all countries were colonized or they were colonizers. So
I mean, I just heard Agnė and I was like, oh, it's a problem. I mean, things are just so like comparative in nature. I was like, I was able to appreciate what she was saying because they have the same issues. And so we are not alone in this misery. There are others as well.
Whenever it comes to mediation, dispute resolution, everything, people are people. They're the same everywhere. Same government is government. It's the same everywhere. Mindset has been the same. So you always think that it is everyone's issue.
Absolutely. So, just moving from that, I think we have we have understood, okay, even if it's an individual issue, how we can see it for other similarly situated people, how government needs to think in that terms when they are dealing with mediation in such situations, while also upholding the principle of being fair, being non-arbitrary in nature, and so on and so forth. Then also there is another issue that sometimes creeps in is that, when there are substantial questions of law in a dispute, can mediation handle it? Probably a judicial authority on it is a better suited opportunity, and probably it will actually help the mediation to flourish. Given that, I mean, if there is an important question of law, if the judicial authority gives it in a dispute, maybe other disputes can be better handled through mediation. So I think we should not be afraid in the sense that, litigation is always bad. Sometimes it's important for development of jurisprudence, points of jurisprudence, interpretation, and those disputes are far and few. But litigation should not become like this hotbed of, just going there just to prove a point, just to harass the other party, just to wear them down. That should never be the motivation. If there is genuine question of law, substantive question of law, and of course here the role of judiciary also comes into picture. How they use their writ jurisdiction has become a very big issue today. How they're using their SLP jurisdiction, how they're using their writ jurisdiction, making it more and more expansive in nature, bringing in disputes that actually don't need I mean, there's no need for them to go into writ petition, as there is just so many remedies available. I think their judiciary also has a very big responsibility to ensure that writ petition is not misused or abused. So that is one thing that is, I think.
No, but in this, but the thing is that the problem, of course, on one end is that, of course, the judiciary thinks that it is a world on its own and it can do anything. That issue by itself stays. But from my end, we have to explain to the judiciary, of course, knows, but we can still talk about it, that what they put out is law. That a Supreme Court's decision is law. So should they not be spending, like you said, if there is a precedent to be put out there, they should be spending time on those
more time things, on that,
and instead of one frivolous thing that the government created somewhere.
Right.
Because what you will do, Palak, is also have a look over time in terms of our judgments. And the quality of judgments, has that changed? Because obviously the judiciary is spending much more time on other things rather than actually concentrating on deciding issues. How many of those judgments are looked at from the constitutional perspective as important decisions over time? Has that changed? All those things need to be looked at, because we have to explain to the judiciary itself that what you are doing is definitely, you can pick up everything because you have the jurisdiction, and yes, people should have an option. But on the other side, what has happened because of that? Because you don't have that much time, then you say in a writ petition, we will put costs. It is under Article 32, it's fundamental right violation. And you are saying we'll put a cost on it, which means you're going to deter people from even filing that. What are you doing? Then you've gone against the basic constitutional mandate. So that by itself has to be put out there. I mean, this is something which is what is happening, that direction that the Supreme Court has taken is an issue, big issue, because then that means your basic work also now you are not willing to do, and you, because of the fact you're overloaded with work. And on top of that, Palak, what also needs to be put out there, that the Supreme Court Chief Justice made a committee to look at drafting a mediation bill. First of all, I mean, of course, they will say for giving recommendations, but in a way they were drafting a bill. Where does the judiciary fit in? Now you want to become legislators also.
Also.
So now, but I would further, the Code of Civil Procedure is 1908. Absurdity of the biggest kind. Look at how that has to be looked at, because that is something on a day-to-day basis the judiciary has to deal with. Nothing is not happening on that. Those are major issues. That first get your house in order. Well, we won't get a house in order, but we will go into this direction and put the focus onto this because we are inefficient. So okay, so, but just putting it out there, Palak, because you are now the voice for me taking up all these issues.
That's a big responsibility of put on my shoulder. But yeah, I mean, if you see the civil rules on mediation that have come under sections 89, that flows from section 89, I mean, it's already there. Again, no point of repeating that whole exercise. We can just probably just make some switches there. And again, there is Arbitration Conciliation Act. This whole, again, this process of, it's just, I think it's just a way to just ensure that, oh, we are doing something so different and so unique, and we are bringing mediation in the system. But that's something that we have come to understand with time, that that's not the case. And I mean, the Supreme Court has, I mean, even changed their own. Sometimes they're saying mediation, conciliation are synonymous. Sometimes they're saying we need mediation is different. We need another act. So yes, of course, that
Confused.
clarity needs is not coming.
Confused. They're confused.
They are themselves confused among themselves. So I think we should have that clarity when we are working, wherever we are working, to clarify that, you know,
to give that clarity to you. People will try and confuse you. In the civil procedure, in section 89, the word mediation and conciliation are used. In Arbitration Conciliation Act, section 30 uses both the words. It says in an arbitration, the parties can settle it through mediation, conciliation, or any other method. So now why those two words? And this is, I put out this two-word theory. The two-word theory is mediation, process the same. There's no difference in the two. Mediation, if you want to stay in the arbitration and you want the arbitrator to pass a consent award. In conciliation, you go out of the arbitration provisions, go into the conciliation provisions. That settlement agreement is anyway as good as a consent award. You don't have to come back to the arbitrator. So that's why those two words are required. Someone might want to confuse you in this manner. So that in the Civil Procedure Code, also the two words are there. Although the actual language was different, and under the AFCON's judgment, they tweaked that aspect of it. But the same logic applies for me. Mediation, you stay in the court. You get that, you settle the matter, come to the judge, get a court decree. Okay. Go out into conciliation, you go out of the court system, you settle the matter, that is as good as a court decree. Why do you have to come back to the court? People have to understand there is a cost to come to the court. There's a cost to go to the arbitrator. Why? And we've got the provision available to us where you don't have to do it. People have to be explained this, because lawyers will not explain it, because they are making money in every aspect of it. Come back to the court, we'll file something, we'll file this application, we'll do this. You've taken time and you've put a cost on them. Instead, explain to them that this is now as good as a court decree. Why do you have to go to the court? So this aspect, even properly, the AFCON's judgment also did not put it up properly. If you read the language, somewhere it says, yes, they can go there. It is by itself complete. But then they say, you come back to us. I mean, they've totally confused. So one strong message that has to go out from the Supreme Court, if a Chief Justice has to do it in a judgment, he has to do it publicly, say that we have a conciliation provision, which is mediation. And under that, that settlement agreement is as good as a court decree. When he puts that endorsement on it, at least some faith can come into people's mind to use the process. Today, the problem is we'll use the process, we'll get that settlement agreement. Will the courts acknowledge that or not? They don't have any idea. Where's the precedent on that? So instead of confusing people, I think do a positive thing by putting it out there that this whole procedure exists and you will get a court decree sitting in your village.
So I think that's one of our actual way forwards to build on anything before we do anything else. And, you know, sometime taking processes, a simple message of how the two processes, I mean, they are the same in a way, and we have everything in place.
In a way, no, Palak,
they are same. They are synonymous. And
why there? I told you the reason also. I told you.
Yes.
And if you look at what you do is you look at the Arbitration Conciliation Act.
Yeah.
Look at
and
the
also
act. The first, it starts off by saying
Yeah.
we have adopted the
Ankit Ral.
Reconciliation Rule 1980. It very specifically says that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So message I think has been received. Clear. It's now loud and clear. So that's one way forward that we really need to emphasize as much as we can. Some others very specific, I think, can be, you know, the departments that are dealing with the litigation, how they can assess, evaluate the litigation that's happening with them, have some clear court case management systems in place to have it all in place, collated data, make it more real for them to understand what's happening. Right now, it's just files and notings, and they don't really understand the impact that the effect that it has on the entire process of on the entire efficiency of the department itself, the the efforts that are going into it, the man hours that are being put into something like just dealing with the litigation that can be taken care of just as a grievance. All of that requires some sort of a system in place where all of that data of every department is there. I think for central government there is now LIMS, which is Legal Information Management and Briefing System. Again, any software is as good as the people who are using it. If we use it properly, we understand the motive, the objective of it, the vision of it, we can truly utilize it. If we don't, we just see it as any just another digital system where we need to make entry and do things. So I think that clarity of thought needs to be put into every department, every undertaking, to take this seriously. The collation of data on litigation, as we discussed, on costs, on the litigation fees that is going, the lawyer fees that is going, all of it, when collated in one go, will have a better impact in terms of numbers that we have. It will make a bigger case of why we should not go for litigation, what kind of amount, the money that is just being invested into litigation, and also the amount of suits and the contracts that are being held hostage for in these litigations. The just money that is just pending there. So that needs to be there. Then the due compliance of any administrative or ADR mechanisms that are available. Of course, direct shifting to mediation may not be something that every department will be readily going to, but at least starting with the basic schemes and processes that they already have, even that is not happening. Even that is not something that people are trusting. So I think that due compliance of all the resolution mechanisms that they have, so that it instills confidence in the other party also, that okay, these things are not just some boilerplate clauses, they're actually being utilized by the department. They're trying to amicably settle the dispute. So we can probably have more of customization and personalization in these clauses then, as per the needs of the department, bringing in mediation or bringing in other resolution mechanisms that are right now not getting involved in these contracts. So if we see the tenders and these contracts that are being floated, crores and crores of money, I mean,
billions,
government
millions of dollars.
Sorry, billions and billions of. I'm so sorry. I've been part of the system so long. It's really hard.
Just for people to understand. I mean, there are people from all over.
I understand. Yeah. So billions of dollars and contract value is there. Now the government is engaging with private parties, giving them contracts, tenders, floating tenders. So this whole it's very important to have a strong dispute resolution mechanism in place, which right now becomes very copy paste. It's actually very copy paste. They have copy pasted it from some contract somewhere. They don't have any idea what it means. They don't know what amicable, what settlement means, what anything means. They've just seen it. It looks nice to them. Hardly there are any legal people in the system, in the department itself. They have government advocates who come at a later stage. We were talking about prevention. Prevention cannot happen if you don't have good legal people in the system. You have legal people only when the case goes to the court. then you have government advocates who who hardly care about the
and also the fact, if you go to those advocates, they also, you don't even know about the conciliation aspect of it. They can actually advise on that aspect, that if you have that by itself can be a binding thing. But just one step before that, like you said, look, it's not about mediation. We don't have to have mediation. The point is that always there has to be a process available where you collaborate or you amicably resolve. Getting a third person should not be a first step in any case. So first thing for these government officials, as part of the recruitment process, I think the fact that whether you have a mediator mindset itself should be looked at, because you are looking at everything from that perspective. You're going to be dealing with so many people, so many issues on a daily basis. That mediator mindset will really help. So I think that also, please put it down somewhere in your recommendation, that it has to happen right at every recruitment stage, that part should be looked at. How it has to be looked at, how you gauge it, we'll have to find a way to do it.
But yes, this wonderful suggestion. I feel that, having that mediator mindset itself can solve a lot of problems, because ultimately government is sitting there as sole arbitrators and, mediators. They are taking that role themselves and sitting, but they don't realize what it entails, what it actually means. They think that, okay, they are doing the same thing.
And then that's why I think that's why for these officials and everyone, please point out Section 30 of the Arbitration Act. Say that it doesn't go against the concept of arbitration that the parties settle. It's very clearly put there. And how they settle it, those options are also being given there. So it doesn't go against arbitration also, if you have the mindset. But only thing you have to be careful, let not the arbitrator do the mediation. That is not the right approach at all, because that we discussed also in our MEDA session also. That part of it should be very clear, because mediation is a different process. A lot of things can be discussed in it, and then only the process is beneficial. But if you are not going to use it in that way, you're going to hold back because the person is going to be the arbitrator, then the process doesn't work. So that also has to be explained, that should be separately done by a third person. The tribunal should not start looking at mediation and then doing arbitration.
I've taken that note. I've taken a note of that point. It's, I think, very valid.
It's all recorded. It's all recorded. You can look back at it also.
I mean, that's more or less about it. And of course, as a country, and as a commitment to the processes of mediation, as we have already adopted Ankitral in a way that our entire act, we have imbibed the spirit of it, and we have obviously said that we have adopted it in our in a way that that international law is now part of our national law. So it is very much a part of what we are doing. We have also, ratified. We have signed the Singapore Singapore Mediation Convention. Not signed yet, but not ratified yet, but we have signed it. So maybe the next step can be, making that commitment even stronger and ratifying the thing. But again, that does not stop us from what we are doing. And it's just a more, I think, a reaffirmation of commitment towards mediation, and having an important way of how international dispute settlement can have a better enforceability in the country, I think.
Palak, but I've been discussing this, and I've been the mediation legislation, that symposium. The idea was that what does Singapore Convention say? That of course you have a law in place that if there is a international settlement agreement, it will be enforceable in your country. I am saying that the concept of mediation by itself should be understood, that the mediations in general can happen anywhere, because under the Singapore Convention, the advantage is that you can do a mediation within a country which is not even a signatory. Not even a signatory, but it can be enforced in a country which has ratified it. It goes totally against what the New York Convention is. People have that mindset in themselves about about arbitration and New York Convention. The foundation that has been created is very good, that you can do this anywhere, because today there is no concept of who's doing it, where they're doing it, because it's all online. It is their process. They do it wherever. So I am saying we did not even need the Singapore Convention if every country says that we will enforce a settlement agreement. It's as simple as that. Nothing else required. If you have settled the matter, you have a settlement agreement, come to us, we'll enforce it. So in that sense, of course, it's a good thing to put out there. Yes, the Singapore Convention is happening. But the problem with the Singapore Convention is that it lets the countries qualify that they will not they apply it to their own issues, their own disputes. So government disputes some countries have excluded it from there when they've ratified it. So, I mean, if you have like, say, Belarus, Georgia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, they're given that reservation that will not apply to settlement agreements to which they are a party. So that should not become an issue when they ratify it. So if you have to talk about ratification, then in that sense, will they ratify? Today, the government, if you saw the standing committee report, which was sent to the government from the mediation bill.
On the mediation bill,
They said the government had said in front to the standing committee, it seems that we are not inclined to ratify it right now. We want to see what is the implication of it. Only then we'll be able to look at it. So right now they're not. That's what they've said. So that part, and I think the standing committee understood that part.
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I mean, and I think the last thing, it's not. I mean, it's just something that I feel that given the asymmetry of relationships when it comes to when the dispute is between government and a citizen or an individual, maybe some some support, organizational networks, shared knowledge. Not very sure again on this, that how it can create that level playing field, but at least before entering the negotiations with the government, that having that sense of what they are doing, why they are doing it. I think the mediator ideally should be someone who informs them about the possible the clarifications, the intricacies, and help them identify issues that they need. But at the same time, I think some pre-preparation, some networks, organizational networks should be there for them to give them that shared knowledge of how to prep before they are going into mediation before a government party, so that there is some sort of level playing field for them, and they don't end up settling just because they did not have some idea on certain things. I mean, the whole process otherwise will fail. What we are saying, that the parties should be on an equal pedestal. They can obviously get as per the interests that they have, and there will always be some 50-60, 60-40, 20-30, 20-80. It will always be there, but it should not be just because of the reason of lack of information or lack of power that they hold there in that room.
Let me point out again, the fact is that they should not settle only because the other route is to go through a process which might take 14 years. That should not be the reason. That's why I'm saying that efficiency of the judiciary has to happen, because it has in terms of what is happening in that mediation effect. But you spoke about a helpline. Why don't you consider a dispute resolution helpline, so that people can have access to something? And are you also not looking at artificial intelligence to help in this whole process? Because
Absolutely.
I've in 2 of my sessions at least, I've gone through a process of mediation with ChatGPT, and you try it yourself and you see that this is an option available to people. Artificial intelligence can do a better job sometimes, because I've been saying this, that in terms of the mediators that you're sending out by itself, if they are the ones that are programmed to be mediators, whether they're serving the purpose or not. So in that sense, let's look at artificial intelligence and how that can be considered. Then you can't even have a problem in terms of this aspect, that whether we settled it because, I mean, for other reasons, if the solution came out from artificial intelligence,
nobody
it could be easier. So let's consider all these things and open a mind to it. I mean, Palak is working on it. He has to work with an open mind. There's so much that has to be looked at, but I mean, we are not confined to anything that has already happened. New things are happening. And for me, that aspect of artificial intelligence, definitely, I've seen it in practice. At least there is first access to something where people don't have access to anyone. So at least you can go there and you can start the conversation. 2 people can actually sit and say that, okay, you are the mediator, and make the ChatGPT the mediator. And lots of things are there. So lots of things are available to us today. So which you are going to try.
That is something quite new to me. And I feel that this is something I would like to explore more. given how it can actually help in, this resolution of disputes that are coming through helplines. And it's quite fascinating. I feel, I need to explore this more.
So
And
today it's got late.
yeah.
Tomorrow, sit with ChatGPT
Yes.
and go through these. But look, with ChatGPT, the thing is what prompts you give. Everything is based on, because we were trying it with someone in the morning. I was telling her about it, but the way she went about it, ChatGPT was actually telling her what to do. Instead, you have to make ChatGPT do. So you have to say you are the mediator. You are now in a meeting with so and so, and you will see the difference in the way it comes out. It actually takes you through the process.
Understood.
Even solutions, all that it gives you. So it's all available. You try it. And
interesting. That's quite interesting. I'm definitely going to try this tomorrow. The first thing.
Perfect. So now one helpline you're putting into place, a dispute resolution helpline, where people can be advised whether artificial intelligence does it, whatever does it, and also the other aspect of how it can be used for. Look, there are generic issues which come up, and if already the system has, like you said, if one settles, it should apply to all of them. So all that is available. So lots to happen there.
Right. So
that,
helpline.
Yeah.
So I think I have successfully wrapped up my presentation, and thank you so much for letting me complete it. Even though it took so much of your time, I'm just so grateful that you let me complete it.
Time is never going to be a factor, because I'm saying this is really important. It's so important. No, people maybe don't understand. Imagine, like you said, 50%, if that is what it is all about, and we can, whatever way we can do anything about it, think whom you're helping. You're helping that poor man who's inside that jail, and that I keep saying, the colonizer's cage, is sitting there only because the judiciary is doing things which it should not be doing at all. It is, why should it reach that level at all? So we are thinking of that person. One family, that's a person. It's a family. It's someone affected. Exactly. And you are spending time, even the fact they say that mandatory mediation, of course, oxymoron, they say the judge is actually spending time to see whether this matter can go for mediation.
Can go for mediation, yeah.
Can you imagine that's the time you have? How much time do you have as judges? How many matters you take up? And what is at the cost of that poor person whom you sent into jail? That whole innocent up till proven guilty concept you finished because you're the colonizers in the institution. So the person is sitting inside. How can an innocent person be inside? What basis have you to send them inside? So all that also you have to look at. Palak, you have lots of work to do. I'm sorry. No sleep for you from now on.
Oh my God. I feel that I am now part of a revolution.
Yes,
as you
that's what it is.
In your conference.
It is resolution, revolution. It is. So you have a major role to play in that. Please.
Yes, I am just really glad to be part of this conference, because I knew that what I am going to bring is going to be far less than what I'm going to take away from this conference. So I was extremely excited to be a part of this. Although I felt, oh God, what am I going to speak?
No, you brought in very important.
I'm literally a nobody in terms of the panelists that have been.
Here, it's all about the mediator mindset. If you have the mediator mindset, you are everything. If you don't have it, then there's a problem. So Palak, it was a pleasure speaking to you, and I mean, wonderful things that you brought onto the table. So of course, it has to be carried forward, and then what we'll do is we'll get more people into the discussion from other parts of the world. We'll have one whole thing about government mediation circle, because World Mediation Circle is about creating circles. So let's create a government mediation circle, and people from all over the world to come in, and all these thoughts that we are talking about, put it into place, and then take it to the governments, not just being an academic exercise or discussing it. Practical things, very practical things to be discussed, and actually we can be put into place immediately if the will is there. And I feel today our government has the will, I feel. But if they're not given the right direction, and if people keep confusing them on things, then of course I think things won't go in the right direction. But we have technology with us, we have a law with us. If we have the will with it, amazing things can happen like that. Amazing things can happen, and Palak is going to be at the forefront of it.
I wish. At least I want to be part of that change story. If I can just do my contribution, I think.
And with that, now you have that confidence. Anyone tries to confuse you on and ends up the
Yes.
conversation on mediation conciliation, tell them,
I
yeah, there are much more things to do. Please, this argument take up with somewhere else. We have so much more to do.
No more question now. It's very clear.
And please
Thank you so
join
much.
other sessions. If we are still some sessions to go. Please join them. Closing session, last day. Please join us and
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Palak. Wonderful.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Bye.